쓰인다. 이후로 잊어버리겠사.
Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack
and Sean Chapman.
We are here as always to talk about stuff, and this week I feel like I have to offer a rare explanation for the theme song.
Yes.
That is the Covenant Prayers track on the Halo 5 Guardian soundtrack.
Oh, I thought we were starting our satanic cult. I thought that was what this podcast was going to be.
Why does it have to be one or the other?
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, that's our way of saying this week is the Halo 5 Review Spectacular.
Yes.
We've played the game a lot.
Yes.
It had its ups and downs.
Yes.
But we're going to talk about it.
Definitely.
Yeah, and that'll be at the end of the show. That'll be the bulk of the show today. We've got a couple other topics, including this week's Doctor Who.
Doctor Who.
Which, I mean, the spoiler-free review on that one is that it's good. It's sometimes really good, but it's so much a part one, I don't think we have a ton to say on it.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll have a brief discussion of, like, things that interested us or things that maybe didn't work. But, yeah, it's definitely more like the old New Who two-parters of that. The first part is very much a setup, and whether or not the story works cohesively as a whole really depends on whether or not the second part can pay it off.
So we shall see.
Yes.
But let's see. What other stuff do we have on the docket, Sean?
I don't know. You have the docket, so let's find out.
Okay, here's something I want to talk about.
Yes.
We talk about superhero shows on here all the time, or superhero movies on here all the time. And you've bitched endlessly about Man of Steel.
I mean, it's a terrible fucking film. I still don't understand how you like it.
It's okay. And we've both expressed, some distrust maybe of DC's movie plans.
Yes.
But I know, I have not watched a lot of them, but there are a lot of DC Universe TV shows on the air right now, mostly made by Greg Berlanti and his team.
Yes.
There's like the
Arrow,
Arrow.
Flash, yeah.
And
they're still afraid to call him Green Arrow, and I'm not.
Oh, apparently this season he's called Green Arrow.
Yeah, but they need to change the name of the show to Green Arrow. It's like, we need some green back in Arrow. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
But I know that's supposed to be a good show. People really love The Flash, and I think that's all pretty cool. But this week on CBS was the premiere of Supergirl, which is one of those properties that probably just shouldn't work.
Sure, yeah.
and mostly, as I understand it, has not in comics.
Yeah, like, I've never really read much Supergirl in comic books, but in the DC animated stuff with, like, the Superman cartoon or the Justice League cartoon, she was always a fun character.
Oh, that's cool, yeah. Well, the show is really good. I just wanted to mention it because we talk about superhero stuff enough, and I watched the Supergirl pilot, and I've got my season pass ready. I want to watch the rest of it. And it's a really good show. The actress who plays Supergirl is Melissa Benoist, who I had only seen before in her bit part in the film Whiplash. She's good in, but she's not the main character. And she's great. Like, if you were to put her in, a superhero movie right now, she would immediately be, I think, one of the just best cast superheroes out there right now. And that's awesome. And there's some parts of the show that I think so far are, like, a little shaky. Like, she's working with this government agency where David Harewood is playing the stern black authority figure who doesn't want a girl on his team. And it's kind of funny in the pilot because they're so clearly commenting on the stupidity of kind of sexism and superhero stuff. Of, like, if someone's got superpowers, what the fuck does it matter what genitalia they have? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's sustainable for 22 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's always one of those things that, like, pilots are rocky almost.
Yeah.
Like, it's so rare for a TV show to have a pilot that's, like, really, really strong.
Right. But this is a good pilot. Like, I mean, in the opening 12 minutes, she goes from kind of, she's suppressing her powers, Superman's already there, so she doesn't think she has anything to do, and then finally her sister's on a plane that's crashing, so she jumps into action and saves the day and becomes Supergirl. It's like, there you go. You could have spent, like, 6 weeks on that.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad you didn't.
The Smallville version of Supergirl, where it's like she's just, like, constantly almost kind of becoming a superhero, but then, no.
Yes.
We'd have to pad this out for 10 seasons.
Yeah, so, and then, by the 30-minute mark, she's already got the costume, and the costume looks great. It was designed by Colleen Atwood, who did the costume for Man of Steel also. And I think the Man of Steel costume is good for, like, the aesthetic they're going for, but it doesn't completely scream Superman. This one, though, I think is a good mix. Like, I could see someone actually wearing that thing, but it also looks comic booky.
Yeah.
And I like that. Without completely sexualizing Supergirl, which would just be distracting. And they do make fun of it in one moment, which is nice. But it's fun. It's a really good show. It's got the tone just right. Like, in that it's a lot of fun, It's mostly lighthearted, but it's also got, some characters and relationships to flesh out, and that's pretty much, I think, what people want when they complain about something like Man of Steel.
Yeah, that it's... I mean, do they have any, really overt, Jesus allegories or something,
No.
stuffed in there all over the place?
No, it is completely comic booky. I mean, it's way more in the Marvel model. This feels like a Marvel Universe kind of thing to me, honestly. In fact, I think it's kind of funny that DC is basically letting Greg Berlanti and company do their own thing on TV, because DC has there's such this strong mandate of trying to be no jokes, no fun, no humor in their movies. Supposedly, again, none of them exist yet, but that's what we've heard, and that's what they're saying at panels and stuff. But the shows, and again, I haven't seen The Flash, but I understand it's the same kind of thing on The Flash. They are comic book shows made by comic book fans for a broad audience, and that's cool. And I like that in this show. The other funny thing is that they obviously are not allowed to use Superman. They can't cast their own Superman and have him on the show. So they always have to say, your cousin is off doing this, and they've got... Jimmy Olsen is on the show, and actually I really like the actor playing Jimmy Olsen, and he's really good. But the whole thing is that he's come from Metropolis to whatever town Supergirl's in, basically as Superman's envoy for her.
He's Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen.
He is, and he's like, your cousin couldn't come here himself, so he wanted me to give you this. And it's stuff like that. It's like, Superman could find the time, guys. He isn't.
Yeah, he can kind of get there within, a fraction of a second.
Yeah. But I also like the idea that Superman is kind of just a dick in this universe, and he made Jimmy Olsen relocate to a different city just to take care of his cousin.
I mean, if it's Jimmy Olsen, in the comic books, he has a tendency of, stumbling into weird temporary superpowers that cause mayhem. So maybe he was just just get the fuck out of Metropolis, Jimmy. I don't need you, tripping into fucking magic goo and turning into a giant tentacle monster. I just don't need this shit. Just leave. I've got a fucking cousin. Just go hang out with her for a little bit. She'll take care of it.
Well, and actually I think that could be fun. Jimmy Olsen is a really good character in the pilot. He and Melissa Benoist have, great chemistry, and I hope they do a lot with that character, because it would be fun if, in episode 3, he gets a weird superpower and, as you say, just starts fucking shit up. It could be fun. What else was I going to say? And the other funny thing, continuity-wise, is, it is flagrantly not the Man of Steel continuity, and I found that just kind of chuckle-worthy. They even say, yeah, when your cousin came to Earth, his first thing was saving a plane, too. And it's that is completely not what happened in Man of Steel.
Yeah.
And just things like that, and, the timeline and the continuity. Superman has been around for, 30 years in this universe. They adjust Kara's backstory so that she was actually sent to protect him as a baby, but she got trapped in the Phantom Zone.
Right.
And then came 30 years later. So, which is kind of fun. And then,
which I think that sounds like that is one of the Supergirls, because there's a lot of different versions of Supergirl from the comics, and that backstory sounds familiar to me.
Yeah. So it's fun, and it's got me watching a CBS show, which is weird.
Yeah.
And also, fuck CBS. I just want to say that for a second. CBS shows are so hard to watch. If I actually liked The Big Bang Theory and wasn't repulsed by it, it would annoy me because it's not on Hulu, and it's not on any other streaming service. You have to watch it either on TV when it airs, or on CBS's own pay
all
service.
Access Pass, CBS.
Which I got a free trial of. It still has the ads. You pay your $6 a month, and you get to watch the shows with a full suite of ads. Great.
I mean, you should be grateful that they're letting people advertise to you to let you know that there are things in the world that you might want to buy, Jonathan.
Well, it's
incorporating you into our consumer society. I'm grateful.
I'm making fun of CBS, but the other show I know both of us have wanted to watch is The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Yes.
And basically the only way to do it is the clips on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I would occasionally maybe like to sit down and watch an hour of Colbert just because it would be fun.
Yeah.
But no.
Yeah, no. The network TV is a weird creature, Jonathan.
Yeah. It is.
Slowly, it's trying to figure out how to fit into our new society where it's I'm not going to fucking sit down at 7 o'clock every night to watch something specific.
Yeah.
It's I'm not going to pay money so that I have to keep a fucking schedule on my free time. Fuck that shit. There is a world of entertainment out there that I have very easy, cheap access to.
Yeah.
I'm going to make use of that.
Yeah. So I just bought Supergirl on iTunes because it was on sale, and I kind of want to support the show. I would like this to succeed because then maybe other women will get to be superheroes.
Don't be crazy, Jonathan. That'll never happen.
It is, you watch it and you're there is legitimately no good reason for this not to be a, it's sad that the Supergirl show on CBS has to be this flag bearer for feminism in modern Hollywood.
Yeah. It's
weird.
It's weird.
But anyway, speaking of free shit and ads,
Right.
YouTube Red launched this week.
Yeah, I have basically no idea what it is.
Okay, well, I bought it,
Yeah,
and
you
I'm
can educate me now.
I've started using YouTube a lot more lately than I even had in the past, and it just kind of, when they announced this, it dawned on me, I use YouTube more than any other subscription video service, but I get it for free, so I'm actually okay paying for it a little bit, because I do use it all the time. And basically what YouTube Red, it's $9.99 a month, the first month is free, so you could try it now for 30 days, and no financial risk on that. And it takes all ads out of the videos, just super smooth. You get no ads, none of the pop-up ads, none of that. You just get the videos. So that's nice. And then in addition to that, if you're using one of the iPhone or Android apps, it can now do background play. So if you come out of the app, you can still hear it, and I love that. That really annoyed me, because a lot of the stuff I watch on YouTube, I also kind of just listen to, and it's annoying having to keep my phone awake and everything, so it'll do that. Sometimes it's nice just to be able to listen to it. So there's those sorts of things. You can save videos offline for watching later. So if you don't want to have to buffer it, you could just do that. And then starting in January, they're going to have exclusive content from some creators, most of which I don't care about, because...
Got to get that PewDiePie, man.
Well, there is a PewDiePie show.
I know. That's all I kind of heard about it. Was there's going to be a PewDiePie thing. It's great.
Do people actually watch?
I know PewDiePie. Understand what it is.
I know PewDiePie has 30 million subscribers, but does any actual human being watch him? Or is it just bots?
I mean, no. At least in my framework of the world, in which preteens do not count as people.
Okay.
No, nobody watches him. These odd creatures somehow get access to the internet and watch him and are spellbound by this mystical PewDiePie, but not people. No, not people.
Okay. Well, anyway, but Rooster Teeth's first movie, Laser Team, which is coming out in January, that'll be on YouTube Red. So that could be a way to watch it if you didn't back it when it was in its Indiegogo form or something. So I like it so far. I just wanted to mention that because it's interesting. As always when something like this happens, there's been a bunch of stupid controversy over it online.
Yeah.
And it's silly to me because it's people use shit like ad blockers and all these other ways to get around, the advertisements that are on YouTube, which are already paltry. I mean, it's 5 to 30 seconds, And most of the people on YouTube are not rich. They're probably not making a living off this, but they should make a little bit of money off it.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to watch ads, I always like the option to pay instead of getting the ads, because that's what money is for. And I'm fine with that, going directly, and they are giving it to the content creators. Obviously, the economics of it are changing, and I don't think anyone's sure exactly how it's going to work yet. But they've been working on this for a long time, and I do trust that YouTube isn't just going to fuck over all their content creators, because then they wouldn't have anything.
Yeah.
So I trust it works, and I just like it as a service so far, because it just it's only $10 a month. For the amount I use YouTube, that is completely fair to me. And I could understand, if you don't watch YouTube all that much, obviously, you just don't pay $10 a month for it. But I watch enough YouTube stuff that it's fun, and it allows me to use, my Android app more than I would have in the past, and stuff like that. So, it's nice. And, but still, people want to get mad about it.
I mean, anytime anyone asks anyone to pay for anything on the internet, people have to be mad about it, even if asking them to pay for something is in no way taking away from the thing that they're already getting for free. Which seems to be the salient point here, is that YouTube Red existing as an option is not well, that means that you don't get to watch YouTube videos anymore unless you pay us $10. It's no, we are creating a program by which some of our very famous content creators are going to be incentivized to create these sort of other content for the subscription thing, but that's not really taking anything away from you as the viewer.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I like about it, is that it doesn't change anything whatsoever about the existing YouTube experience. You just, if you want to subscribe to it, you can, and it's really seamless. It just, you sign in, and all that stuff is there for you, and that's nice. It's just, you can pay to get some more if you want, and maybe, support content creators and stuff more directly instead of using ads.
Yeah.
So, that's nice to me.
Anytime we can, break away from this current model where it feels like everything on the internet is basically supported by ads, which makes no sense at some point, because ads
terrible.
are not effective, and it's this weird transient thing that is sort of funding everything that's eventually it's going to have to give way. So
it's a bubble that is so obviously bound to burst, because the way the advertising models work on the internet, you're getting fractions of pennies on the view.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, or on the hit online, and it is just not supportable. If you look at the number of sites or content creators that actually have a big base, it's so rare that they can actually make a living off of that.
Yeah.
You can have millions of views and still, potentially not be making a ton of money. And that's crazy. And so it's a really silly model. And yes, I like being able to, pay more directly or sites that have that, because generally, the content is better when that happens.
Yeah.
Like you talked about Giant Bomb before having their subscription
Yeah,
service.
yeah, that it's something that's totally worth it because you don't have to see any of the ads, and they provided a lot of subscriber specific content that it feels totally fair because it's like $5 a month or something.
Yeah.
Offering the subscription option is always better to me. That it's something where it's the direction that things have to be moving, because it's basically like the Netflix model or something, but just for the internet. And it's
right.
Like, I would much prefer to pay a small monthly subscription than to be bombarded by ads constantly, because that sometimes, like, on the internet in particular, ads can become extremely obnoxious.
They can just break a site.
Yeah, and hinge your ability to actually engage with the content.
Like I've talked before, one of my favorite movie sites, and TV sites, just because of the people who write there, is HitFix. And that site has gotten virtually unusable because of the amount of ads they throw at you. You have to go through a pop-up, and then their own ads on it before you can get to your content. Then when you get to their content, there's more pop-ups and stuff. It's like getting to look like a fucking porn site from 2005. And it's ridiculous, but I know it's probably not completely by choice that they have to do that.
Yeah. It also makes any of those sites like completely unnavigable by phone, because
Yes.
phone browsers just do not handle pop-ups like at all. Like, it's just like it just kills it immediately.
Yeah. It's nuts. Anyway, that's what's going on there. Let's see. What else do we want to talk about? I think the next thing on my list I'm going to skip. So let's go ahead, Sean. Our first topic of the night. Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F.
Yes.
The
Katsuno F.
which is a great title.
It's a really good title.
The latest movie, follow-up to Battle of Gods, which was the 2013 Dragon Ball Z movie.
Yes.
Kind of their revival film. This came out in Japan earlier this year. Finally came out on Blu-ray in the U.S. a couple weeks ago. I have not gotten a chance to watch the Blu-ray yet, just because I've been busy, but you watched the Blu-ray.
Yes.
And I saw it when it was in theaters, so we've both seen the movie.
Yes, we have.
What did you think of Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F?
I thought it was awesome. And, it's something where, very specifically, I think it's a great sort of companion piece to Battle of Gods, where there are two very different kinds of Dragon Ball Z movies, and I love them both kind of equally. Like, if you asked me to choose which one I liked more, I don't know if I could choose. Because Battle of Gods has a lot of the character stuff and a lot of the humor that Dragon Ball Z is really famous for, and in fact has, since it's condensed into a single movie, it has one of the most pronounced and obvious sort of character arcs in all of Dragon Ball, because that stuff was so spread out in the actual series that Goku's character arc over the course of Battle of Gods feels very succinct and satisfying in a way that Dragon Ball usually doesn't really deliver on. And so that was fun, because it's you get that side of Dragon Ball that's generally unserved. It actually has been completely unserved by the feature films that preceded it, which were all basically hey, Cooler is basically just Frieza, but we can't just use Frieza because we just killed Frieza in the anime, so we're just going to redo the Frieza fight with this new Cooler character we made and put that out as a 70-minute movie. And that's basically all the
40-minute movie. None of those were feature length, and they were made completely by Toei staff with no involvement from Akira Toriyama, who wrote the manga.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, some of those movies I do enjoy. Some of them, Bio Broly, is the most terrible thing, although it's still fun to watch because it's so not Dragon Ball. It's incredibly fascinating. But some of those movies I very much enjoy.
You actually referenced Cooler's Revenge as one of my favorites.
Yeah,
so.
I think that one's a really fun one, too. The reason why I mentioned it is because it's one of the first ones that comes to mind, because I do like it a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Battle of Gods is very different from those. But then you get now Resurrection F, which, there's no... It's kind of impossible to spoil this movie because, the first marketing material that came out for it, which I love, just was hey, Frieza's back, he's got a new golden form, and hey, Goku and Vegeta are going to fight him, and they have a new Super Saiyan form that has blue hair. That is literally, the first thing they released about the movie, because Japan doesn't give a fuck about spoilers. They're we're just going to get right in on marketing and merchandising this shit, and not try to, be so coy with it that we have to be in America that I hate.
Yeah.
So Dragon Ball Z Resurrection F, Frieza comes back to life, and it is basically a really, really good version of those other Dragon Ball features that are mostly just about fighting this one enemy. And that's basically the whole movie, when you get down to it, is all built around setting up this confrontation and then just executing on the confrontation, and that's the movie. And so, where Battle of Gods had a lot of story and humor stuff, it the fighting, while was good and really well animated, was very light compared to maybe what some Dragon Ball fans are looking for. Resurrection F, if you had a problem with the amount of action that was Battle of Gods, Resurrection F is the movie to watch, because it is basically, it has probably like 15 minutes of setup, and then the whole rest of the thing is basically just like a prolonged series of fight scenes that become like more and more and more ridiculous as it goes on. And it's incredible. The action is extremely well animated, the best action that Dragon Ball has ever had.
And also just well choreographed.
Yes, very well choreographed. Yeah, that it's not just well animated, you're right. That it's well designed, well choreographed, they're very interesting.
True to character.
Yeah, and that's something that's important to bring up, is that it's not just Goku and Vegeta fighting Frieza, that there's a very long fight sequence that is basically, it's Gohan, Piccolo, Krillin, Master Roshi, Tien, and Jocko the Galactic Patrolman.
Jocko!
They're all fighting this massive horde of Frieza's henchmen, which I don't know how they did that horde of Frieza's henchmen, because they all look like they are just individually animated. Like, they don't look... Like, I've seen scenes like that in anime before where you have a huge number of characters on screen, but generally most of them are clearly background elements, whereas this, it looks like they put a lot of time and care into being like, no, those are all like individually animated characters on the screen, and none of them just look like they have fallen into the background.
It's a really cool series of shots.
Yeah, it's really effective at creating this sense of like a big scale fight in Dragon Ball that's not two people fighting on a massive scale, but like this big battle between two forces. And so that allows them to have some fight scenes that are sort of like scaled down in terms of the power level, and it's not just like people kicking each other through mountains and stuff, which you get that later on. But this is more like you get, like, Tien is a martial artist, and Master Roshi and Krillin, they're martial artists that have, like, heightened powers, obviously, but their fighting styles feel like they're still rooted in martial arts, and the choreography is such that, I mean, I recently watched a couple of Bruce Lee movies that are available on Netflix, and watching them in close succession, it does feel like Resurrection F brings in an actual sense of choreography and pacing to a kung fu kind of fight scene that Dragon Ball usually is more, like I said, kicking people through mountains and shooting like giant energy balls and stuff.
Yes. No, I love this movie. I think Akira Toriyama's hand shows so strongly in it, just as it did in Battle of Gods. And he didn't directly write Battle of Gods. He more or less rewrote every word of it, but, you know, he did not. But he is directly credited with the script this time, and it is so purely him through and through. Every beat of the frickin' movie of having, you know, like, I think specifically picking Frieza and then treating Frieza the way he is, like, because as fun as, like, maybe Cooler can be in one of the movies, Cooler is a clone of Frieza who they don't quite get what makes Frieza interesting. It's not just that he is a big bad and he's powerful, it's that he is petty, and he is so full of himself, and no matter what, he believes he has the upper hand, and that he is a petulant little child when he starts to lose. And that whole arc of it is great, and it's why Frieza to me has always kind of been the best of the major DBZ villains. Because of the interplay he has specifically with Goku and Vegeta because of those things. He brings out things in Goku and Vegeta specifically that are so fascinating and fun, and I think in this movie, a lot of it through the fighting, which is cool, but just through the movie itself, you really see how Goku and Vegeta have kind of changed over time, and how now getting to see Frieza again, who has really not changed, he will always be himself. He's gotten more powerful, but he's still Frieza. You kind of see different sides of him. Like Vegeta, he is not fucking around anymore with this guy. And the fight between Vegeta and Frieza at the end of this movie is so fucking great, in part because they don't give you much of it. Because Vegeta is not Goku. He's not going to spend 20 minutes toying with this dude. He is just going to show he's superior. And he totally does.
Beat the ever-living shit out of Frieza, which he does.
And either way you watch it, English or Japanese, where you've got either Ryusei Nakao or Chris Ayres, who both do just great versions of Frieza, you get so much good performance from Frieza. Like, I think, on some level, Toriyama might have just wrote this so the actor, you know, Ryusei Nakao, could do more with the character. And then in English it must have been fun because Chris Ayres they only got to use for Kai, which wasn't, I don't think, even that widely seen. And so now you get a big movie to use that actor, and he's so great. So, that's fun. I think the animation is so good, and Battle of Gods already had beautiful animation. Like, Dragon Ball Z had never been done with that level of budget or care before, and I think clearly they got even more money for Resurrection F, because Battle of Gods was a hit. And I love just the general design. Like, it mostly takes place kind of on this cliffside, and the color design is all these, like, blue skies on the ocean, and this kind of blue and green kind of color scheme, and then that works so well with the Golden Frieza transformation and the Super Saiyan Blue transformation and those sorts of things, where it all just looks so visually dynamic and colorful and really cool to watch. Like, I love just like the poster for this movie and the different images I've seen. I think it all looks awesome. And yeah, if you just see it on its own, the Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan transformation, which is where they have blue hair, sure, it looks a little silly. In context, it's the most awesome thing ever.
Yeah, it is, and there's something, it's like the effects they do along with it, like the aura, like the key aura that they have and stuff, look fucking so cool. Like, they really, like in still images in the marketing material, you do kind of roll your eyes at it, but yeah, as it's executed in the movie, it's a lot of fun. Like, you just... It's something where you may be, like, looking at it and be somewhat skeptical of it. It's like, oh, this is just going to be another... It's just one long fight scene and stuff. But as soon as you get into it, at least for me, it's like all the skepticism just, like, blows away immediately. And it's just... I'm such a fan of this franchise and of the characters. And when it's done well, there is nothing on this planet that is anything like Dragon Ball at all.
No, and
it's so good. It's just so good.
And I think what Battle of Gods and Resurrection F have proved is this is... weirdly, this intensely auteur work.
Yeah.
Like, it's weird to apply that to a guy who really likes poop jokes, but Akira Toriyama is such a singular voice. If you love Dragon Ball, I have to stress, someday you should read the manga, because it is so well done. I don't think anyone has mastered that form quite in the way he does, of just the simplicity, but the dynamism, and just the general storytelling style he favors is so well done. And in these movies, it really does feel like... Because, we've had... the Toei DBZ 1 through 13 movies, and we've had some of the one-off specials, and some of those have been great, but none of them have been quite as good as these two movies, in terms of stuff outside of the original series.
Yeah.
And it's just such a strong and pleasant reminder of what this guy can do at his best. And then all the collaborators, obviously. Lots of people worked on these and did great work on it, but that heart of it is there. I mean, I think a lot of people seeing Resurrection F in America probably won't be familiar with one of the big new characters, which is Jocko the Galactic Patrolman. But I think, as you were telling me... even if you don't know him from the manga he was in, just seeing him for like 5 seconds on screen, you get it, you get why he's funny, and he fits the world so well.
He does, and he, like, plays, like, a really kind of crucial role in the plot and in sort of the dynamic of the film, because he is basically the comic relief, but he's not just comic relief. Like, he has this very dry sense of humor that is kind of missing, that, like, there's just this piece that fits in that, like... You just kind of need to keep everything lighthearted, because eventually, like, you're just watching people fucking kick the shit out of each other for, like, 30 minutes. So cutting to, like, Jocko and have him say something sort of sarcastic, or then cutting to Beerus and Whis, who also have some minor appearances of this movie, but when they pop up, they're very funny.
Yeah.
So having that balances the movie very well.
Absolutely. And, this one, I think, does ultimately have a lot less substance than Battle of Gods. But it almost doesn't matter, because... even in those periods of, like, the original Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, where Toriyama would be a little light on the substance, like the Boo arc or something, he's so good at having long-form fights that still are informed by character and develop character, and this feels like a very concentrated burst of that to me.
Yes, yeah.
So I love that about it, too. And on the animation point, again, I saw this in theaters at the Alamo Drafthouse on a really big screen, and it was so fucking cool. Like, I never thought it would be... get to see Dragon Ball on, like, a 4K projector with the most beautiful animation. It was really it was just an awesome night seeing that movie. And I'm sure the Blu-ray looked great and everything, too.
Yeah.
And, so any way you watch it, it's great. But it's just, I love that Dragon Ball Z is kind of back in the spotlight. And in some ways better than ever. Just, they're doing it so well.
Yeah, it's something where it's just, like, I don't know, kind of the highest compliment I can pay to this movie is that when it was over and I, like, just, like, got up, like I was shaking, like I was just giddy with excitement, like there was just like it's because it's not even just that it's a nostalgia trip, because there's certainly that element to it, but it's just that there's nothing like this. There's nothing like that insane mix of just ludicrously over the top action and just humor that should be so dumb that it doesn't work, but I find funny every single time. Like, I think basically every joke in the movie lands to me. Even, like, strange jokes that, like, are much broader that you don't even expect to be jokes and stuff like that. Or it's, like, even just the opening of the movie where Frieza is stuck in Earth Hell, which is just him hanging upside down from a tree with, like, little, like, forest sprites and imps dancing around and singing, like, this idyllic Midsummer Night's Dream sort of thing. It's... like, little touches like that are it's just insane but brilliant, and so bringing that sort of energy to it, it's impossible for me to come away from this movie with anything other than the most like excited demeanor possible.
Again, it is an odd word to apply to this because we don't use this word in this scenario, but it is totally an auteur thing. It is like no one else is going to think of doing that with Frieza, as evidenced by like what they would do with him in GT or something. There's nothing that fun in the other versions, but here, no, he's on this weird Earth hell, and there's a fun song playing, and that, of course, that's how Frieza would be tortured.
Yeah, the best part is that it's not even just that. There's like a part in the movie later where that is like he brings it up, like, and that is his specific motivation. He's like, "You guys have any fucking idea what you did to me? Like, I've just spent like the last 30 years in Earth hell." Like, having to watch these fucking imps and fairies prance around, I am not going back there. Like, that is a huge part of his motivation, is that he doesn't want to go back to this incredibly ridiculous form of hell.
It's kind of a great revenge movie on that level.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't
I really sympathize with him, because that would fucking suck.
Yes.
Especially if I was, like, evil to my very core.
Right. So great. And I mean, did you stay after the credits where it happens again?
Yeah.
I love that.
It's very good.
I like that the credits also do the thing the DBZ 1 through 13 movies did, where they replay the movie in short form over the credits.
Yeah.
That's so bizarre, but it's kind of fun.
Yeah. It's just like, I remember when Goku beat the shit out of Frieza. I remember when Vegeta beat the shit out of Frieza. This was all fun. This is a fun movie.
And at one point, like, this happened 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
No, it's great. Yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a great movie. And it's on DVD and Blu-ray and digital. I don't think like when Battle of Gods came out, they were able to have it on digital right away, but they've gotten cleared more rights for it, which is cool. And hey, maybe Toei will let them have Dragon Ball Super at some point.
Yeah,
imagine that.
What's going on with that? But
Dragon Ball Super is, I mean, if you want to pirate the shit out of it, go ahead. It's really fun. I mean, I've only seen the first 8 episodes. They're up to like 14 or 15 now. I need to get back into it. And it is retelling Battle of Gods and Resurrection F, and then they're going to get into some new material, and there's a lot of new stuff in there. But it is kind of this weird postmodern experiment thing at a certain point where you have the original thing done by Toriyama, but not in a manga, in cinematic form.
Yeah.
And then you readapt it almost immediately in TV form. So some of the things that made the movies great, like the visuals, obviously you can't do that on TV. But then they have to focus in different ways, but I don't think Toriyama is there writing it or overseeing things. So it is kind of fascinating to me how it's being done. But yeah, I hope it actually comes out here because clearly there's an audience for it.
Yeah, and hopefully, I hope they keep on making these movies because they've been so good and they've been hugely successful. Like even like in over here, like just insane.
Pretty much every showing of Resurrection F in the United States sold out.
Yeah.
Like, I had to see it because I was out of town the weekend it came out, and so I had to see it the Thursday after that weekend. And they had added shows. The only reason it was playing to Thursday was they had added shows, and the show I went to was still sold out. Like, I bought the tickets early, so, but yeah, by the time I got there, sold out. That's nuts.
Yeah, and on the Blu-ray, I should mention that there are 2 special features, and they're not huge special features, but they're very interesting. Like, I would encourage people who have the Blu-rays not to just skip them and check them out. One of them is something that they also did on Battle of Gods, which is taking a scene from the movie. It's a fight scene in this instance between Goku and Frieza, and putting a picture-in-picture for whenever a character is speaking. They put in video of the voice actor recording the line, and that's a lot of fun if you have any interest in voice acting like I do. I just find the whole process fascinating because it's so sort of like behind the curtain and you never kind of get a peek at that kind of stuff. It's really interesting to see that, like, I feel like some people maybe have an image in their mind of voice acting that, like, it's all just, like, they're just, like, sitting down at a table with, like some blasé expression on their face, just, like, saying the line. No. Like, you watch these people having to, like, mime these fight scenes just with their voice, and, like, they get so physically into it, and Chris Ayres, the person who plays Frieza now, has to screech at the top of his voice, like, so many times, and his just face just, like, becomes demonic, and it's something where you could, if you ever see interviews with people that worked on the Batman animated series talking about Mark Hamill recording voices, they have similar descriptions of, like, you could, like, motion capture the actor's face and, like, use that as reference for the characters because, like, they have to get so into it and they're, like, sweating and exhausted by the end. It's a really interesting thing to watch, and it makes you respect the process that these people have to go through to play these roles a lot more than you would otherwise, because on the outside it seems like it would be something very easy, and when if you watch this, it's very clear that it is not. It's not something that just anyone can do. And then other than that, there's also a documentary that's a lot of fun to watch that is basically, it covers the premiere of the movie that happened over here in Los Angeles. So it was the Japanese premiere of the movie, where a bunch of the Japanese cast, like Masako Nozawa, the Japanese voice of Goku, came over, and they have some interviews with her, some interviews with the director, some interviews with the mixing the American cast to the Japanese cast. That's fun to watch, and they edit it well so that the weird translating interview stuff isn't too awkward. There's some weird moments of awkwardness with that, but they do a pretty good job of it. And then there's another sort of set of interviews taken at the American premiere that's just the dub actors, and then a lot of interviews with people that went to the premiere, and just that's a lot of fun just to see this huge wide variety of fans, of people just incredibly enthusiastic about Dragon Ball. And it makes you really appreciate also the huge diversity of kinds of people that like Dragon Ball, and that it is a franchise that breaks all boundaries, and it's there's a lot of African Americans, there's a lot of Asian Americans, a lot of just normal white Americans, there's a lot of Latin Americans, there's every sort
normal
of
white Americans.
Yeah, I have the majority population, man.
Okay,
but yeah,
that's just in a certain. If you were on CNN, you would be getting hate mail for that.
But you know what I mean. It's the majority population. Yeah. And it's and it's not even just you don't just have factions of different ethnicities. It's just everyone is having a good time together, and it makes you appreciate that. Where I feel I've seen billions of these kinds of documentaries for every franchise under the sun, but usually it's usually just white people, and that's kind of it. That if you see one that's I can't think of one off the top of my head, but there's plenty of them that
Twilight conventions.
Yeah, sure, something like that. It's just it's such a limited representation, and this I was this is every Dragon Ball speaks to a certain kind of person that transcends all sort of personal boundaries, and I find that really fascinating and sort of heartwarming.
Well, and I love that Funimation clearly went out of their way to make a nice release for this. That's nice.
Yeah.
They do. Funimation is such a weird company to me, because 99% of what they do is fantastic. They do God's work in bringing anime over here.
Yeah.
They still put out good physical media sets, except they keep fucking Dragon Ball Z in the ass with their weird cropping of the series.
Right.
Where the only version they've released in full in its original 4x3 are the out-of-print Dragon boxes, which I'm very lucky to own, but if you want to watch DBZ without it being cropped to shit, you're out of luck.
Yeah.
But everything else they've done a good job on, so it's weird. But yeah, I'm excited for Super to come out here, because I would like to get their physical sets that I'm sure they're going to do a good job on.
Yeah.
I like that Chris Ayres will get to voice Frieza again in an arc of a TV series. That's going to be fun. So anyway, that's our Dragon Ball Z talk. I love that we get to talk about Dragon Ball, and it's new Dragon Ball, and it's good.
Yeah, exactly. We're not just relegated to picking up scraps from video games or something to fuel the fandom. That there's new original material coming from the creator.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of TV shows, I don't know.
Right.
Doctor Who.
Doctor Who?
That was the worst transition I have ever made.
Yes.
Yeah, but they are both TV shows. So, even though we were talking about a movie just now, it's based on a TV show, which is based on a manga. So really, they're not analogous in any way. But Doctor Who, Episode 7 of Series 9, the Zygon Invasion. What'd you think?
I liked it a lot. Like we said at the top of the show, it's an episode that's hard to talk about it on its own, because it's very different from the rest of the season, which has all been two-parters so far. But all those two-parters, each individual episode has a very strong identity. This one very much... I mean, it makes use of the fact that it is a two-parter in the sense that it has a very classic Doctor Who kind of cliffhanger situation at the end, where every character is about to die, and obviously the first 2 minutes of the next episode, that situation is going to have to be resolved, but that's how cliffhangers work in TV. But I do think it's a very interesting episode of Doctor Who, because it's very different from how most episodes are. When I was thinking about it, that this kind of feels like Doctor Who as an episode of Torchwood, only it didn't trip all over itself, which is what every episode of Torchwood ended up being. And that this episode is that sort of almost kind of Star Trek-y kind of sci-fi that is much more concerned with using the science fiction elements as a very direct metaphor for contemporary political issues, which is very much... I mean, it's kind of impossible to talk about this episode and not bring up the fact that it's there are obviously ISIS parallels going on here. There's a lot of sort of issues discussing multiculturalism that is becoming more important in the world. And Doctor Who usually stays in more like kind of broader philosophical topics of like discussing things of like what it means to be human in a like kind of universal sense, which is more what the past couple of episodes have been of discussing like immortality and how lifespans affect you and how losing people affects you and how memory affects your life. Like those things are very broad. This feels very, very specific, and that's not a bad thing or necessarily a good thing. It's just something that is a nice change of pace, and we haven't had an episode like this in a while.
I do think definitely pace is something to think about, because I think Stephen Moffat has arced this season very well, and I think, Stephen Moffat generally does not have that much of an interest in Earthbound Doctor Who stories. You just look at his tenure versus Russell T Davies's. They have very different interests, I think.
Yeah.
But even then, the fact that we really haven't had any Earthbound stories, I mean, I guess some of them take place on Earth, but you know what I mean. They're not like present day.
Or not like contemporary London set.
It's all what you're saying. This season has been about the cosmic perspective. And I think because of that, there's almost something mildly refreshing about this episode, of that it is very different. It's in the much more down-to-earth, intimate, today sense. Kind of in the RTD vein, but I think
But like different. It's a little bit better than like when they did their Big Brother parody or whatever in the first season.
Yeah. Oh, God, I forgot about that. That's a good episode, but it's
a pretty good episode, but it's also like, it's like the social commentary is very goofy in that.
That's one that just Christopher Eccleston makes so hard.
It's a very fun episode, but it's not,
Anyway, I guess, just a brief interlude. So Chris Eccleston is on that show, The Leftovers?
Yes.
I heard on Twitter, I didn't see last night's episode yet, because again, I don't watch TV on a schedule.
Yeah.
But I guess he had a full frontal nude scene last night.
Fantastic. So we get a good look at his sonic screwdriver?
Yes.
Has anyone else made that joke yet?
I did not see that.
Okay, good.
But, I mean, how many doctors have gone full frontal nude?
None, as far as I know.
Okay, well,
I know one companion that has.
Oh, who's that?
Joe Grant.
Really? I would not have expected that.
Katie Manning is a lunatic. She is fucking crazy in the best way. It in no way surprised me when I saw that post on the Doctor Who subreddit. It's just like, wait, what do you mean nude photos? Like it's like some like actual like nude magazine that she did a photo shoot for.
So it wasn't on Doctor Who. I'm just kidding.
No. The third Doctor and Joe Grant had a very strange relationship. Let's just keep it at that.
All right. Well, anyway, so different than the RTD era, and I think because we haven't really had a story like this. I mean, I guess the first 10 minutes of The Magician's Apprentice had unit and stuff, but it wasn't the focus of the episode. Mm-hmm. And so to get a unit story, kind of globe trotting, all of that, it's not the most interesting form of Doctor Who to me. I will always prefer the cosmic scale sense because it's just, as a person, that's what I'm more interested in.
And I think that's where the show is a lot more comfortable and it's a lot more skilled at exploring.
But I think as long as you don't do it all the time, there's room for a story like this. And I definitely did enjoy it on that level of okay, this week they're going for something different. A lot of it will depend on how it turns out next week.
Yeah.
But this is good so far.
Yeah, and the setup for next week I think is really strong.
Oh yeah, I mean this episode I thought was decent to good for most of it, and I think the last 10 minutes are kind of great.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
The whole revelation with Clara, because one of the things I was thinking throughout is okay, if this Clara is not a doppelganger, this episode will piss me off because she is not talking or acting like Clara at all.
Yeah.
And that's really are they slipping back into Series 7 Clara? What's going on? And then of course she's a doppelganger, and I'm phew. And then Jenna Coleman gets to have so much fun playing a villainess. That's great.
And there's something really kind of amazing about seeing Clara just holding a fucking rocket launcher, right?
Yes.
You just get to the end of the episode, you're I never expected this would be something that I wanted to see, but I'm really into what's going on screen right now. This is, as far as I can remember, this is the only time we've ever fucking seen a companion hold a rocket launcher before.
That's such a weird, specific first for Doctor Who.
Yeah. But it is there's just something where you see her going into the army or something, and she pulls out this suitcase, and you're what is she grabbing? And then she opens up the suitcase, and you're holy fucking shit! It's a rock, she has a goddamn rocket launcher.
Yeah, I think in terms of that basic, Doctor Who two-parter setup of doing some basic exposition and then building a killer cliffhanger, this is a pretty great example of that, because the cliffhanger is great, because you go along for a while thinking it's a pretty standard Doctor Who story, just in terms of the plot beats of the Doctor's going to go here and try to figure this out, and he'll find a way out of it and all that. But no, he's been tricked, and back in England there's like 20 million Zygons who have already taken over, and Clara's already been taken, and now she's got a fucking rocket launcher and is aiming at the Doctor's Air Force One, which means the Doctor, every time he gets in that plane, winds up destroying it, which I think is an awesome, just recurring theme.
And depending on how the beginning of the next episode goes, maybe every time he gets on that plane, Osgood dies as well.
That would be hilarious, frankly.
It's like, there's just some sort of, like, time thing where it's like, Osgood, it's your fate, stay the fuck away from that airplane.
Yes. So, I liked all of that. It definitely left me feeling like, okay, I'm excited for next week.
Yeah.
They could drop the ball, but then again, there's so many things there's so many good paths they could go down. It would be tremendously disappointing if they didn't go down any of them.
Yeah, exactly. And it does feel like this episode is so intent on setting up the next episode that it would be very surprising if the next one fell flat to me.
Yeah. But, I mean, hey, we are definitely 7 for 7, and that's pretty incredible. We
Yeah.
made it through the halfway point on good episodes.
And I don't think that that's ever happened. Like I mean, season 5 doesn't have a really bad episode anywhere, but I think by the time you have your halfway point,
you had Victory of the Daleks, which is boring.
Yes, yeah, and that's one of the lowest points in that season.
The other ones are really good. Well, I guess you also have Vampires of Venice, which is kind of boring.
Yeah, it's those two are probably the two worst episodes off the top of my memory.
So yeah, definitely we did not have a weird random Slitheen episode or something this season. Anyway, I always feel like the Slitheen were horribly abused, but they're only in series 1.
Yeah, but
they're horribly abused within series.
Yeah, and they're because they're in 3 episodes because they have that 2-parter, and then they have Boomtown, which is a very good episode. So I like that one a lot. But
a full quarter of Christopher Eccleston's tenure.
Yeah, it's like they're weirdly dominant. Like they have as many episodes in that season as the Daleks do. Actually, they kind of have more because of the season finale.
They have in one season as many episodes as these Zygons have had a lifetime.
It's true. It's true. Now the Zygons are pulling ahead of the Slitheen and sort of Although, to be fair, Terror of the Zygons, the original Zygon story, is a
serial.
4-part, so that kind of counts as 2 Modern Who episodes.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, but I mean, how did you feel the Zygons themselves were used here?
I like them. I feel I'm kind of conflicted about it. That I do, I've said before on this podcast about this season of Doctor Who, I will always appreciate a goofy rubber monster. I have no problem with that. But I do think there's an element of the Zygons that they maybe had an opportunity to do a bit of a redesign that would have made them more threatening, a la the Silurians or something that I thought had a really incredible redesign. Which, I mean, the Silurians needed it more because the original Silurians look terrible. But the Zygons, well, I do think that they work pretty well, and once you get into the episode, I'm not just rolling my eyes at how goofy they are. I think their visual design means that they're never quite intimidating to me, and they're kind of trying to pull something that's a little more intimidating.
Because I think the other rubber suits this season have had a certain amount of self-awareness to it.
Yeah.
When they get on screen, the tongue is planted at least halfway in cheek.
Yeah, exactly.
And here I don't think there's any of that, because they really are trying to make them menacing. And I think for the most part they do a good job. I like that we don't actually see the Zygons in their Zygon form all that much, and that makes them scarier. But it does mean when you get to the end and they're on the plane and he's interrogating a Zygon, I'm kind of just laughing at it.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's what they want,
Yeah, and it's just the costume is, because it's so bulky and it's bright pink, so it stands out so much in almost any kind of lighting. Although I should say that I do give them a lot of credit for, I think, the Zygon technology, the organic technology that they have, peppered throughout the episode is really cool. I think that builds a nice mystique, especially when they go down into the basement and the apartment and stuff, and they see all the pods. I think and the way that scene is lit, that's very effective, and I think more Zygons in that kind of lighting would work a lot better. But it is specifically when he's interrogating the Zygon on the plane, and it's this bright yellow lighting. It's this costume does not work. It pops way too much and draws too much attention, and a costume that goofy should not be drawing this much attention.
It's also a weird thing where the production values of Doctor Who are almost getting the best of it, because in HD, in this resolution, especially, you can see where the Zygon rubber suit meets the makeup and where the human is. And it's just it's those kind of things that really would not matter in the days of shooting this stuff on analog video.
Yeah.
But now, as you say, it probably needs a redesign, just because, the Silurians, as you say, that redesign, it pops in HD. You can film it in whatever resolution, and it just looks good. And I think maybe even some of the other rubber suits this season, that hasn't been a problem. But definitely, the Zygon's not perfect.
Yeah.
But I still like the ideas. I like the script by Jamie Harness. does a good job of like using the idea of the Zygons, I think, in a way that the 50th special, for instance, where they were really just kind of side villains, it didn't get to fully utilize. So I think it uses, obviously, I mean, the beginning is an exposition dump from the 50th.
Which is it's really weird to see that scene from the 50th anniversary with 12th Doctor music on it. Like, it was like, just like, kind of like, it blew my mind, because it was you're crossing over things that weren't meant to cross over. It's like you're breaking your own time stream or something. Something weird's going on when they do that.
Exactly. But I mean, they had to do it
to
set up this story. And so I kind of liked that he said, okay, so we had this situation like put into place there in that episode. Now let's see what might happen because of it. And that's interesting. Like I do like that you would take like the basics of the Zygons and build a story around that so specifically. That's kind of fun.
Yeah, and it ultimately also serves as a nice, like, sort of modern version of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers story, which is something I've really loved the original movie and the 70s remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because they're just great sci-fi horror movies, and it's nice to have that sort of represented here. And I think they're very intentional, some of the parallels, because there are specific scenes, like especially the one with the kid, that feel like this is so Invasion of the Body Snatchers. They know that, like, that's this kind of story, that they have a lot of fun with it, and I appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah. So definitely some good scenes throughout. I think Peter Capaldi just has a bunch of great lines.
Yeah.
He's very funny throughout. He's definitely in the background more in this episode than he has been this season, which is fine.
Yeah.
I thought the only part of the episode that really dragged for me, and I don't think worked really at all, was the stuff with Kate Stewart in the town in Mexico.
Yeah, New Mexico, yeah.
It's just like nothing happened. It was a lot of build up to, oh, that person's a Zygon. Doy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's such kind of false tension to me.
Yeah, and I think they kind of try to go too heavy-handed with, like, oh yeah, we totally killed Kate Stewart. She's dead. That character's dead. Like, we just killed her off screen. Like, that's definitely, it's like, that's a little bit too hard, like, because that wasn't necessarily right on the cliffhanger. I was like, I can't, they're, like, this is no. Like, no, she's not. Like, no. Yeah. Obviously, she's not.
Yes. But anyway, any other, like, kind of, I don't feel like we have that much more to say, but any other kind of overall thoughts on the episode or specific scenes?
Nothing's coming to mind. You know, I really enjoyed it. I'm really looking forward to next week to see what they do with what they set up.
Here's one.
Okay.
Osgood is rocking the question mark
yes.
hotels. That was great.
Yes, that was actually one of my favorite scenes in the whole episode, because it's something that, like, you could do it really poorly with the bringing up the question mark thing again, because it's so bad. We all know that was so bad. Everyone involved with the production at the time, except for the producer, John Nathan Turner, who, when he came on, he's the one who made Tom Baker wear the question marks on its collar that then carried through until eventually you have fucking Sylvester McCoy is just, like, literally just covered in them. Everyone except for John Nathan Turner knew that the question marks were the stupidest fucking thing. But I like that they don't just make it a one-off, like, throwaway joke. Like, there's an actual conversation held between the two about the question marks, and I just love that he's like, oh no, I'm still wearing them, I'm wearing question mark underpants. I love that. Like, there's something about that he's not just saying that, like, oh, it was stupid, and, like, no, it's like, no, I'm still wearing them. Like, there's a sense of the show owning how stupid that was, and not just dismissing it, that I can really respect. That it's the best way I think you can, if you want to bring up the question marks and sort of put that to bed, I think this is kind of the best way to do it.
And I also just want to say, I don't think I've ever really been all that interested in Osgood as a character.
Yeah, I mean, she hasn't really been in it much. Yeah.
But this was the most I've ever liked her. Yeah. I thought she had a couple of really good scenes. They had to retcon the shit out of things to bring her back to life, but that's fine. And I think she's way more interesting in this episode than she has been before. So it doesn't feel like the random thing from the RTD days where they would just bring back a character we don't really remember and have them there. This one, actually, I think it earned it very well.
Yeah, then it kind of just feels like her character was created to get us to this point, like, so that she could be used in this episode, like, because she's so in the background in Day of the Doctor and when she gets killed.
In the Oh Missy You So Fine scene, the highlight of Doctor Who Series 8. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fucking. I can't be mad at Doctor Who right now. Doctor Who's on a fucking roll.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is one where, again, it all depends on next week, but I'm really appreciating this two-parter kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even in a week like this, where this is a much more traditional two-parter, but I like the breathing room. It's like, if they go back to single stories next year, I'm going to miss this, just because there's so much as I say, breathing room to everything.
It makes this season feel really big to me. Because the stories are much more robust than they traditionally are, and I think it's one of the things that has enabled the season to be so good is that. I just think the writers have all done a very good job of handling the situation, and it has basically improved every single writer across the board because most of the writers are returning writers. I mean, this is the guy who wrote Kill the Moon, and I think this is a much better episode than Kill the Moon.
Yes, and I mean, it could fall into the trap where technically Kill the Moon was pretty good for its first half, and then it fell apart. Yeah. But I don't feel that here. I don't even know what it would be. What bad science could result from this, other than the Doctor opens a wormhole or something. I don't know, with the sonic sunglasses. That would be awful. Yeah. But I don't think they're going to do that. And next week is actually co-written by Moffat, so it could be really interesting. I don't know what they're going to do with that. So
one other thing, thinking of going back to Osgood, is I like that every time she has appeared, she is cosplaying basically as a different Doctor. I can't wait until she wears the Colin Baker Technicolor
coat. My god, that's going to be great.
That needs to happen. That costume needs to be on screen again in some form. Because she's done the 4th Doctor, obviously. She's done the 5th Doctor. She's done the 7th Doctor. We need the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
That's great. By the way, I think that's enough for the episode. It was good. Round of applause for Doctor Who. One other piece of Doctor Who news, though. Did you hear the Big Finish news this week?
Yes, there's actually been a round of Big Finish news for the past couple of weeks. But
there's been a bunch of cool stuff. The thing that I thought would be of most interest to people is they're doing a range of 10th Doctor stories
with Donna
with the original actors, David Tennant and Catherine Tate. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's something where the Big Finish recently sort of renegotiated its contract to what it has access to. So now they have access to basically, I think, all the New Who stuff up to Peter Capaldi. Okay. And so basically, and so far what they have announced is there's going to be a line of River Song stories, and one of them that they've announced so far also is going to have Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor in it, which that sounds really fun.
That sounds exciting.
Those are two characters that would be fun to have together. Then they have John Hurt back for a series of War Doctor stories. That's going to happen. How
did they get John Hurt for that? That's
incredible. I don't know, but he's because they had a small 3-minute audio thing with him on it announcing it, and I listened to it just to be you actually have John Hurt here. It's that's John Hurt. He is there. He's talking to Nicholas Briggs, the fucking Big Finish dude. That's happening. So that's going to be that's kind of actually my favorite part of the announcement so far, just because I feel the best thing that Big Finish has done with Doctor Who is patch up the areas in Doctor Who's past that have not been well filled out, which is specifically the 6th Doctor stuff and the 8th Doctor stuff that they have done so much with, and just sort of really rehabilitated that area of Doctor Who and given Paul McGann and Colin Baker the chance to really flesh out their characters that they never got a chance to with the show. And so that's always been a lot of fun. And then the War Doctor is obviously in this awkward situation where he only exists for the sake of that 50th anniversary special. So being able to flesh out that version of the Doctor, I'm excited for that and to get to explore that side of the character and what Big Finish has to do with that. Then also there's going to be 8th Doctor stories involving the Time War more directly because they've never really been able to have access to the Time War sort of contractually. Okay. So that stuff's going to be sort of bleeding into the 8th Doctor story.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I like you talk about patching up things that Doctor Who didn't get entirely right. That's why I actually really like the 10th Doctor and Donna stuff, because I like Series 4 and I love Donna as a companion. But if you look at that series, so much of it is distracted by returning guest stars and stuff that Donna I don't think ever got fully fleshed out as a companion or that relationship. And so I like getting a little more of that. Yeah. And you can always give me more David Tennant. He is great. Yeah. But all of that sounds exciting. And you know what? I hope one day they can come up with a script good enough or a pitch good enough that Chris Eccleston's heart will be warmed and he will do more, because there is not enough 9th Doctor in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if anyone can do it, Big Finish can do it. I mean, they were so dedicated to trying to get Tom Baker to come back to do 4th Doctor stories, and then eventually they got him to do it, and they're pretty fun. I've listened to a few of them. And so it's if they can get Tom Baker to come back, it's they should be able to get Christopher Eccleston to come back, because Big Finish has such a strong stable of writers and such a high bar of quality for the writing and the production that I hope that would attract an actor like Christopher Eccleston to come back in a way that I can understand maybe why he wouldn't want to come back to the TV show.
Yeah, definitely. So, and maybe he can have a full frontal scene on that too.
Sure. Yeah, audio full frontal. I'm down for it.
All right, Sean, so speaking of full frontal nudity, let's talk about Halo 5 Guardians.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been wondering when we would get to see the Master Chief's face, when we didn't expect that we'd get the rest of it along with it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Not as big as you would expect.
No, he was compensating for something.
I mean, the Spartan 2 program has a lot of effects on the person's biology and physiology, and, you can see that.
All right, well, we're delaying the inevitable.
Yeah.
We have to talk about Halo 5 Guardians.
Yes.
Been out for about 6 days now. Oh, a week now. This is Monday night we're recording it, so started playing it a week ago. And I guess I'll start here.
Okay.
Because I know what my opening statement was going to be. And I hate to have to say this.
Right.
I hate it. There are few video game franchises that are more near and dear to my heart than Halo, and maybe none, because while I love Persona with a fiery passion,
Yes.
Halo has been in my life for over a decade.
Yeah.
And that's not true of some of these other ones. And Halo, I think, got me into gaming in the way I'm into gaming today. And I will always love it. It's a lifelong relationship. I'm never giving up on it. We're together, and we're there, and it's this. But this is the situation where I feel like, I don't know, Halo is like sleeping on the couch this week.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm disappointed in Halo 5. And there are definitely parts of other Halo games where I would say I was a little disappointed, but never a Halo game where I would say, overall, I am disappointed in this. And that's not to say I think the game is bad. I would never call this a bad game.
Yeah.
I know what a bad game looks like. We talked about one last month. That would be like Metal Gear Solid 5.
Right.
Which is an atrocious game. This is an okay game. This has some beautiful gameplay. It has incredible visuals and sound, and just its technical merits are absolutely beyond reproach. And I think the multiplayer is very good, with a couple of big asterisks that you have to talk about. And I think the campaign is bad, and I wouldn't even elevate it above that. I don't think it's mediocre. I think it is a bad campaign on pretty much every level. But overall, I mean, that evens out to not be, to me, a bad game. In part just because there are things about the Halo charm that 343 has not ruined or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a bad campaign, a disappointing campaign in a lot of ways, and I think very good and very promising multiplayer that is not at its full potential yet and is, in its own way, disappointing. But it is a thing where this last week, I mean, I know you and I have talked about it a lot already. Yeah. It's just something where, as much as I think we've been playing about the game, we've been thinking about this game because it is a fascinating kind of mess. And in part, it's because it's not. It's not bad. It's like it's got all this promise to it, and that's what makes it so interesting and also frustrating. So that's my opening statement. Sean, what have you got?
So I basically agree with everything you've said, and I should say that I have been working on, kind of on a whim, I started writing a review of the game. Because I've always been interested in the process of writing game reviews, but I've never really jumped in because I've never felt compelled to. But the problems that this game faces, and my sort of extreme fandom of Halo, because I've read multiple of the Halo novels, and when you read an expanded universe novel for something, you're kind of stuck. It's the same situation I'm with Star Wars. It's like, I'm never not going to be a fan of this thing. It can't happen. I read Halo the Flood, the second novel, that is just basically a novelized walkthrough of the original Halo game. It is the worst novel I've ever read. It is one of the worst pieces of media I've ever engaged with. There's no creativity. There's no inspiration in that at all. It is the most soulless piece of media I think I've ever engaged with. I fucking read that whole thing, and I still don't know why I read that whole thing. So I have this extreme love of Halo. But so I wrote this review that'll probably be up on the site by the time this podcast comes up. And I just wrote it because I had to understand why I was disappointed with Halo 5 in the ways that you are. And it does come down to that I think the game has this really, really strong core gameplay loop that is... I mean, it's basically Halo, but they do actually... I think this is the first Halo game since Halo 3 that has modernized Halo in a successful way. In the sense that, this is the first time that I think Sprint has been done well. I think this is I think the stuff like clambering and stuff like that is well integrated. I think the little tiny changes they make here and there to how the zoom system works to sort of cater to the Call of Duty audience without actually really doing anything for the Call of Duty audience. I think a lot of that side of it, just the core gameplay side of it, is really, really smart, is well done, and is overall, I would say, with with incremental upgrades, this is the best playing Halo there has been. And that's not a small feat. That is not something that's just well, of course all the Halo games play the exact same. When you're a huge fan of this franchise like I am, you know that that's not true, and you know that every single Halo game plays very differently in a number of very key ways, and that the certain core elements keep on getting sort of built up and expanded on and refined, and this is the most refined the Halo gameplay experience has ever been. The main problem is that the only thing that Halo 5 as a package offers that it does really successfully, kind of like universally, is just Team Slayer Online and maybe Team SWAT. Like, that's kind of it. That's the only thing where I look at and I'm like, that experience doesn't feel like it is slim. That experience doesn't feel like it has been cut back or anything. But that's kind of it. There's no split screen. The campaign is short. The campaign is bad in a number of different ways. The story is the worst story that any Halo game has had. And the multiplayer suite as a whole is extremely restricted, has been cut back so far that, I mean, literally the game, I can just say all the modes that the game has. The mode has Slayer, it has Strongholds, it has Capture the Flag, and it has Warzone, which is its own multiplayer thing.
Breakout.
It has Breakout, which is Slayer Capture the Flag. Like, Breakout is just a mode that, like, I would have made on my own in Halo 3. So it's like I kind of don't even think of it as an actual mode.
Just technically it's a playlist.
Yeah, but everything else is its own, like Free-for-All is just Slayer. SWAT is just like a variation of Slayer. And even the Team Arena playlist, which is what you would think would be the Team Objective playlist, because there's a Team Slayer playlist. The Team Objective playlist has Slayer in it, because there's not enough objective modes in the game to actually fill out a playlist. That would only be objective game types. And when you see that, and the more you play Halo 5, the more you see those cracks in that it has this really strong core, but I just don't think it has ever asked you to do anything particularly interesting or varied with that core gameplay experience. And so as a whole, after playing the game for a week, I'm kind of just done with playing Halo 5. Like, I'll probably play some more Slayer here or there, but I played Halo 3 kind of nonstop for like 3 years. Like, I probably touched that game at least 5 days a week for 3 years, and that's not even a joke. Like, that's not an exaggeration. That is straight up. And part of that is that because I had a lot of friends that were also playing Halo 3 at the time, that made it a social interaction. But there were long stretches where my friends were playing some other games as well, and I was still like coming in and like playing Lone Wolves or something on Halo 3. And that's simply not an experience that Halo 5 can offer, because it doesn't have the variety that that Halo 3 on had, that allowed me to play that game so much, because it was different every single time you played it.
That's where I want to start this.
Yeah.
As we get in deeper, because as you say, when Halo 5 is on, it is spectacular. I think I sat down and played Team Slayer the first night, and I played like 10 matches in a row, and I loved it so much I was tweeting like, I want to get down on one knee and propose to this game. Because when you just feel that, when I hadn't seen anything else in the game, and I assumed there would be more from there, it's like, man, this plays, as you say, so well. I think they've refined that core Team Slayer experience to perfection. Like, I've never enjoyed just vanilla Slayer in a Halo game this much. I've always been more of a, like, Capture the Flag, or SWAT, or CTF, that kind of...
Yeah.
CTF is Capture the Flag. Or Oddball or something.
Yeah, One Flag, CTF, Assault.
Yeah, just...
all the things that this game doesn't have on offer.
Right. Or Big Team Battle, or some of those things. So I think that's spectacular, but... You get into it more, and as you say, there's not a lot in the game. Warzone is kind of a bust. The maps are all very small and similar. There aren't a lot of game modes, and then the campaign is just garbage. Not complete garbage, but there's a lot of it that's just kind of, as a Halo fan, pisses me off.
Yeah.
And so there's all that. And you think about, because we talked about this, and you kept comparing it to Halo 3, and I think Halo 3 is a great comparison for a couple reasons. For you, I know it's because that's the one you played the most.
Yeah.
But also, Halo 3 is the equivalent to Halo 5, and that's the one that launched the new console.
Yes.
And it's just a general thing of, like, how far has our ambition fallen that they could create a game like Halo 3, which was so groundbreaking in so many ways.
Yeah, back in 2007. That was a long time ago.
Back in 2007, a long time ago, almost a decade ago, on this new hardware where instead of like resting on their laurels from Halo 1 and 2, they made this hyper-ambitious campaign that had this huge story and was fantastic.
Yeah.
And they had all this new, absolutely revolutionary stuff, like theater mode and Forge, that things people on console had never even attempted before.
And even just like the level of customization it gave you in the multiplayer, that like I'd made like dozens of different game types over the course of my
Everyone
Halo.
did.
Yeah, over Halo 3, because like it gave you so many tools, and like some of those were some of my favorite games to play. Like you could make your own fun in Halo 3.
Yeah, so you can say hey, maybe Halo 5 will get a life of its own at some point, but the point is Halo 3 had a massive life of its own on day one.
Yes.
And it only got better from there. That's true. But what it was on day one was pretty spectacular. And I think just in general, it just makes me think of like what's the state of video games. I don't know what the equivalent to like a Halo 3 would even be today. And I don't think the new generation of consoles, which I think have been disappointing in a lot of different ways in terms of what's come out for them, because it's mostly just been an extension of what we got for the last 8 years.
Yeah.
A little prettier. No one I think is rethinking the way this stuff can work like Bungie did when they made Halo 3. That's just, as a general thing, is kind of a sobering thought.
Yeah, and it's definitely something where it feels weird because I always had, like, one of the things as a Halo fan that I always kind of took as a point of pride over Call of Duty, which I've always enjoyed Call of Duty, but it was like, I always was like the kind of person that would be assert that's like, yeah, I like Call of Duty, but I think Halo is a much better franchise, and like Halo 3 and Halo Reach are much better games for like all these different reasons, and one of those reasons was like, look at all this variety that Halo has to offer. Like, there's so many different modes, and so many modes that you're making that, like, playing Halo 3 2 years after Halo 3 launched is a completely different experience than playing Halo 3 at launch because of all the different things you could do. Like, literally millions of game types that are amazing that fans came up with that then they shared online through file share.
Well, I
Call of Duty never could do any of that.
Right, and I would say, playing Halo 3 or Reach, I probably played a little more Reach personally, but either way, I never got bored playing either of those.
Exactly.
I don't know how you could get bored playing either of those, because there was always something new, and the basic foundations were varied enough that it's just, and like the campaigns were dynamic enough that there was no way to get bored with it. And even now on the Master Chief Collection, I love just going back to these games and still experiencing them over and over again because that foundation is so massive.
Yeah, exactly. And Call of Duty was a franchise that always had like, it had like 5 or 6 modes and then a couple of little variations on those modes. But it always felt like, like everyone basically just either plays domination or team deathmatch, and that's basically it. That's all you do in Call of Duty. And then I find it's like this weird, awkward situation where now it's like the complete reverse of not necessarily like Call of Duty still does not allow you to sort of like really blow out that game and make whatever you want to make with it. Which is like Call of Duty, that's kind of fine because Call of Duty is just not that kind of shooter. But Call of Duty has significant more variety now in its multiplayer suite than Halo 5 does. Like, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare has probably like 3 times the number of modes, and a lot of them are really unique and interesting and different, and not like modes I've seen in other games that allowed me to play Advanced Warfare multiplayer for as long as I played it. And it feels really ironic that now it's like Halo 5, and I'm playing this and like, this is like the scope of what like Call of Duty 4 multiplayer kind of was in terms of modes offered, and that was... Again, that was another 2007. The Call of Duty 4 was much better in terms of like the...
And Call of Duty 4 completely shifted the paradigm of how all of that works. It was a little modest, as you say, in the number of modes, but in its actual like leveling system and stuff was this huge paradigm shift. And Halo 5 doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, like Halo 5 feels like... I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and a lot of it is in the campaign of Halo 5 that feels like they originally had a much more ambitious game that they were going to make, and then at some point along the way they realized that they couldn't do the kind of paradigm shift that Call of Duty 4 was that maybe they were kind of wanting to do, and they realized it too late, and so as a result, like, they couldn't go back and just make the bigger, better Halo, which is, like, I think, I personally would want to see a much more revolutionary new entry into the Halo franchise, because I think it has gotten a little stale, but a bigger, better Halo is fine. Like, there's nothing wrong, I think, with just iterating on the franchise sort of sequentially and just adding some more stuff and refining what's already there. I think it wouldn't be the most interesting thing to do in the world, but I think it would be a more satisfying end product than what they came out with, which just feels really barren.
Yes, and here's something someone who loves the game would say to us, but Jonathan and Sean, isn't it quality over quantity? So let's talk about the quality.
Yes.
Because yes, quality over quantity absolutely does matter. And if it were 4 or 5 modes that were so good and so beyond reproach that we saw the method to their madness, that could work. Like, it's not like that's impossible. That's not what we're saying. But let's talk about the quality. Team Slayer is absolutely excellent, right?
Yes.
It's really fun. It's really good, but that obviously cannot satisfy you forever.
Yeah.
So let's talk about SWAT. All right, SWAT is good, but it is just the SWAT we've always had.
Yeah.
And it's fun because I think the new battle rifle is great, and I like the new Magnum and all that stuff, but it is just SWAT.
Yeah, and I've never been able to play SWAT for like long stretches of time. That's like pick the game up for like 20 minutes and get a couple of rounds in, because then my nerves are shot by the end of it.
Yeah, and I like SWAT, but even here I think the maps aren't quite dynamic enough to really support it in the way, like, I played the most SWAT on Halo Reach, because Halo Reach had some great SWAT maps.
Yeah, definitely. That was the best I think SWAT's ever been.
Yeah, they do not have any great SWAT maps on this one. And SWAT it's a small difference, but it is important. I think SWAT requires a certain kind of like corridor kind of thing that this doesn't have. So, but I mean, the SWAT is still good though. So if you like SWAT, you'll like that. So we have those two. So then we have Breakout, Is Breakout great, Sean?
No, like, I played a couple of rounds of it, and, like, I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with Breakout, but it just doesn't... I don't think it plays to Halo's strengths. Like, it's this very sort of kind of Counter-Strike-y elimination mode where you have one life, and there's a capture the flag thing, but no, in all the games, the rounds of Breakout I played, nobody ever captures the flag, because if you kill the enemy team, the game's over.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier and faster to do that than try to, like, carry the flag from the middle to back to your base.
I have captured the flag a couple times myself because I was curious, and I'm the only one who ever even tried.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't even know why the flag is there. The game would be better if they took the flag out, because it would just be purer in what it is.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the flag is there.
And
but
again, like, Breakout feels like a mode that I would have made in Halo 3
Yes.
and played a couple of rounds with my friends. It's just like, hey, this is kind of fun. This is a different take on Halo multiplayer, but it's not something that, like, I'm interested in coming back to again and again.
Yeah. I think Breakout is fine. As you say, it's enjoyable for what it gives, but as you say, it does not play to Halo's strength, and it never really, like, screams Halo to me.
Yeah.
In the way... And I'm not saying you can't make new modes and do that. You know, Halo 3, Reach, and 4 all introduce new things.
Yeah, I mean, Reach had Headhunter, which I always loved that game type, and
Yeah.
I've always been bummed out that that's never come back.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're looking for a new mode, or like a classic mode to bring back Headhunter. Underappreciated mode.
Absolutely. I think 4 had some good ideas, too. So, anyway, Breakout is not that. So, okay, we got Breakout. So now we got Team Arena, where we have Classic Capture the Flag, which is only on a couple of maps, and frankly, I think those maps are too small for it anyway.
I mean, because I think something we maybe should just address right now is that all the maps are tiny. Like, there are... If you're someone who is way into small, like, midship style maps, like, this is the game for you, because, one, there are 2 versions of midship in this game, which is kind of weird. I mean, across the board in the multiplayer map list, it's very deceptive, at least to me, that it looks like there are a lot more maps than there actually are, because there are a lot of doubled up maps that have, like, different sort of, like, environmental effects on them. But yeah, like, I mean, there is literally no map with a vehicle on it. Like, there's no... Like, Warzone is a different conversation. We'll talk about Warzone later. But just talking about Team Arena, like, what you can play online in that sort of section of the menu, there are no maps with vehicles. You cannot go into a custom game and drive around in a Warthog and, like, have Warthog fights or something. That's not possible. Like, it is literally impossible right now to do that. Which is, like, the most basic thing in Halo multiplayer to me would be, like, yeah, let's drop into one of the big maps and just, like, have a dumb, like, vehicle fight or something.
Right.
And, like, you can't... It's literally impossible. So when we talk about Capture the Flag, don't think Blood Gulch, don't think Valhalla. Think, like, if you were playing Team Objective and you, like, got dropped into a Capture the Flag on midship or lockout, which can be fun. But again, I don't think that plays to Halo's strengths, which is, like, the Capture the Flag in Halo has always been, to me, like, this process of, let's come up with a strategy on how to infiltrate the opponent's base, get the flag, and get it out of there, and having all the vehicles and stuff and, like, this much more expanded tool set and sandbox available to you in that mode is what made Capture the Flag interesting, because you could be so creative in that process on how to get the flag and get it out, or how to defend your own flag. Small map Capture the Flag is basically... I'm going to be on defense because nobody's ever going to be on defense, and I'm just going to watch my 3 teammates run to the enemy base over and over and over again and get killed and get killed and get killed until someone gets lucky enough to get the flag and run away and capture it, because it takes about 10 seconds to get across the map. Yes. And that's every single round of Capture the Flag. It's just that over and over and over again.
And we're not saying that, like, the small map Halo stuff is bad. It's a really important part of the whole. Like, Midship, all-time great map. Lockout, all-time great map. Some of my favorite Halo memories are on the kind of, matches suited to these kind of maps, but the problem is, again, it's part of a tapestry, and the tapestry isn't there.
Yeah.
So you're seeing a small sliver of Halo, and I think if someone were to come into Halo 5 Guardians fresh, I think they might not understand the hype behind Halo, because it is such a small part of what this series is.
Yeah, and it's just something where, as a result of all the maps are basically the same size, like, they are all really small.
They're
like,
all midship clones at a certain point.
Yeah, exactly. That they all feel like the exact same map eventually. Like, they all bleed together in my memory of just, like, they're all... And, like, there's not a huge amount of weapon variety on the maps either. And, like, I find it laughable, the handful of maps that have sniper rifle spawn on them. It's just like, this map is so fucking tiny. Like, I can use the sniper rifle, and it's like, I can get some kills with it. But you can't have, like, those fun moments in Halo of, like, okay, I got the sniper rifle, I'm gonna go, like, up on this, like, little ridge, like, in the shadows above the opponent's base and, like, scope them out and start popping them off when, like, my teammate's gonna go in and capture the flag or something. You don't have those kinds of moments because the multiplayer just doesn't allow for them.
No, and I think a couple of the maps are really good, and I think they're all pretty well designed. Like, they're balanced and they play well. But there is no map here that, like, pops to me like I would have in the other games.
Yeah.
And really the one that comes the closest is the Midship remake that's outside, and that doesn't count because it's a remake.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, and I don't think any of the maps are horrible necessarily. They're all good, but they're not memorable necessarily.
Yeah, and they just all, again, they don't play the exact same, like, they are different maps, but they feel the same at some point.
Which wasn't even a problem Halo 4 had, because we've talked about, like, Halo 4, the maps weren't the greatest, but I can list off, 5 maps, at least on Halo 4, I thought were great.
Yeah, I mean, there was that Haven map, which was kind of their small arena map in Halo 4, which was... I mean, maybe appropriately that was the best map in Halo 4. Maybe they just were like, well, we know how to make this kind of map really well.
Yeah, but none of them are even on the level of Haven.
Yeah, exactly.
Haven's an all-timer to me. I love Haven.
Yeah, Haven's really good. But also one of the things that made Haven stand out is that it was the map that filled that specific niche in the overall multiplayer map library. That's like, you don't want all the maps to have the same purpose. You want to have like a bunch of really good maps that all are slightly different. That like, this is the more mid-range map. This is the larger map with vehicles. This is the really small, like the team like focused balanced map. This is like a smaller, more asymmetrical map. Like, maps fill different niches in Halo in a way that something like Call of Duty doesn't, because Halo has so many things to offer in its sandbox with vehicles and with this wide variety of weapons that fill different roles, that interact in different ways, that you want to have very different maps that leverage that sandbox in different and interesting ways, which is how Halo has been historically designed, and this is the first Halo where they have not done that in the slightest.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, we're talking about the Team Arena playlist, so CTF not that interesting.
Strongholds. I know this is your favorite mode, Jonathan.
I think Strongholds is a heaping piece of shit. I think Strongholds is the worst game type I have ever played, and like an officially released game type in a multiplayer shooter. I think it is so poorly balanced. You have to, basically what Strongholds is it's kind of like territories, but there are only 3 and you have to hold 2 to score, which basically means somebody gets the 2 and they get all the points, and then the other team gets no points, and it's a blowout 100% every time, and I don't even know how it couldn't be, especially because the maps they put it on are not balanced for Strongholds.
Jonathan, have you played Strongholds on a map that's not that? I think it's called Rig, where like you can see where 2 of the strongholds are in line of sight with each other.
Right.
Like, because that's the only I've played Strongholds like 5 times. That's the only map I've played it on. I don't know if it's even on other maps.
I have also played it on Empire, which is one of my favorite maps in the game, and Empire has the same problem basically.
Okay. Yeah, because my experience with Strongholds is, again, I've played it like 5 times. But every time and I kind of played it almost 5 times in a row, where it just came up Strongholds, and then it was on that Rig map. I think it's called the Rigs. And the problem with that is that there is one of the Strongholds, let's just call it A, spawns on like at this box where there's a battle rifle, and that's kind of on its own. And then on the other side of the map, you have 2 of them. One of them is kind of elevated, and then the other one is like probably only like 20 feet away and on the ground, and there's like a bridge kind of between them, and you can literally stand on one of the stronghold points and look and shoot and throw grenades into the other stronghold point. And like you said, you need 2 to score, and there are only 3. So the only viable strategy on that map for strongholds is to go take that one half of the map where you can defend both of those stronghold points at the same time, and if you are manage to get them both, and your team isn't terrible, it's impossible for the other team to win, because you can't possibly take another stronghold for any meaningful amount of time. You just have to never go to the other side of the map, and you never need to. It's ridiculous.
And it's baffling because it's like a mode that doesn't even understand Halo 5's specific strength, which is that if you play any of the other ones, they are so well balanced. That's why it's so good. Like Team Slayer, it is super balanced in a way that I think we have gotten away from in modern shooters, where you start with the same thing. Their basic loadout of the way they have the assault rifle and the Magnum are the perfect pair.
Yes.
At I think any skill level, it makes you balanced but also competitive. The way weapons are laid out on the map is not unbalanced. It's almost always tight matches score-wise that I wind up getting in that.
Yeah.
And it's like so the opposite of something like Destiny or certain things in later Call of Duty games, that it's like, it's so refreshing. And then you get to Strongholds and it's like, who the fuck was taking LSD and invented this shitty game type? Who the fuck thought this was okay?
Or like, who put this, like, who decided where the strongholds go?
Right.
Because that person should be fucking fired, because it's like, there's like 2 or 3 other spots on that map that like wouldn't be amazing, because that map like you can traverse the entire map in what feels like 5 seconds, so it's a tiny fucking map. But there are other better spots to put that stronghold even then.
Yeah. So I hate strongholds. And then what else is even in Team Arena? You get more Breakout and you get more Slayer.
Yes.
And that's every mode, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I just went through every mode. I mean, there's Free for All Slayer,
Okay.
which still has the problem that I'm pretty sure Halo 4 did this. One of the other Halos post Halo 3 did this with the Free for All playlist is 8 people instead of 6 people, and that makes Free for All shit because there's way too many people. These are, especially for this game, because the maps are so tiny. It's way too chaotic. It feels like it's impossible to do well enough to like very deliberately get first place, and it feels more like whoever got first place was more lucky than the other people who were like in the top 3. There's like, I loved Lone Wolves in Halo 3 because it felt really competitive because you only had 6 people, which was a small number of people to have on one of those maps at one time, and that made it much more tactical and interesting. And it's too chaotic.
I played 2 free-for-all matches, and it just like turned me off, as you say, because it's so chaotic. Like I spawned right next to a guy who just beat me.
Yeah, because there are 7 other people on this tiny map all trying to kill you. And the most in any of the other modes is there would be 4. So it's like there's almost 2 times as many people to potentially be shooting at you at any given time on one of these maps. So you're constantly getting shot from behind or from like above or from some direction you can't anticipate because there's just too many people and too open line of sight.
Yeah, and I really love a good, free-for-all playlist. I think Destiny does it pretty well.
Yeah.
I think I loved Lone Wolves back in the day on Halo 3 and Halo Reach. That was a great game mode. But yeah, the 8 people, and again, if the maps were bigger, wouldn't be as much of a problem. But the 8 plus the small maps, then you've got a major issue.
Yeah, so free for all is just not fun, and even then on top of that, like free for all is just Slayer. Like that's not actually a new mode.
Okay, so in the debate of quality versus quantity, the quantity is only like 6 or 7 modes, and the quality is 1 or 2 of them are really good, and the rest are meh to dog shit.
Yeah.
So okay. Well, but Jonathan and Sean, you're forgetting about Warzone, which is 2 more modes, and they're really big, and they have the whole rec system, which does not operate in that. So
3 whole new maps that are like big new maps. If you want to play with vehicles, Sean, which is kind of my favorite. Those are my favorite maps. My favorite thing to do in Halo and multiplayer tends to be the vehicle stuff. At the end of the day, then of course I should just go gravitate to Warzone because it's giving me exactly what I want, right, Jonathan?
Did you like Warzone, Sean?
No. I honestly, it's hard for me to even explain why. Like, the Warzone paragraph in my review is just like me basically saying, I don't like Warzone. And, like, in 5 sentences. Because I couldn't figure out any other way to just be like, I mean, I think it's kind of a baffling mode. I think it's incredibly chaotic. I feel like I have no contribution to what's going on. I think those are all, like, reasons that I do believe I don't like Warzone. But then also just, like, there is, every time I played it, and I've played it, like, 5 times now, I keep on being like, no, the next time it will click for me because I know there are a lot of people online that really like it. And every time, it's like I'm kind of having fun for, like, the first 3 minutes. And then I'm really bored for the next, like, 17 to, like, 27 minutes because that mode is really long.
I'll give it a crack at explaining.
Okay, go ahead, yeah. I just find it boring.
I think that's the basic for me, too. But I think Warzone is a mode with a bunch of interesting individual ideas. Like, I think the MOBA-style thing where you have enemies and, like, helpers on the map. I think that could be really compelling.
Yeah, I like that idea for sure.
I think the rec system where you can kind of craft your own loadouts on the fly instead of having pre-built loadouts is an interesting new idea to kind of have for Halo, and maybe different for the modern first-person shooter scene. So that's kind of, and like as it arcs over the course of the game, that theoretically should give you a nice kind of arc of chaos. So I like that, in theory. I think the maps are very nice. I think they look good. They're kind of fun to play on. And kind of that you have these different bases you have to go to, and there's clear objectives. That seems like it could be good. And then you have some big team stuff, and you have all the vehicles, which, again, plays to Halo's strength. So, again, it's a lot of different ingredients that should be good.
Yes.
But I think when you put them together, they have not mixed those ingredients in any way that is compelling. And that's the biggest problem for me, is the overall experience doesn't make any of those individual things shine. So, for instance, the big team element of it, it's big, but then you've got all this other shit going on the map, and the maps are really big, so it still feels kind of diffuse to me all the time. Like, even if I'm dying fast or I'm killing people fast, there's a lot going on, it still feels like there's just a lot of kind of empty space, or it feels like some people are off over here fighting a Covenant enemy, and some people are trying to take this base, and there's no real incentive to be unified as a team.
Yeah.
So I think that's a problem. I think the matches are too long. So all those things you would enjoy, like that steady arc of chaos with the things you unlock, doesn't really matter because it takes so long to get to any of that the match, one, will already be determined by the time you get there. It's very rare to get a close Warzone match. Yeah. So by the time you get to that point, fuck it, you getting the Banshee is not going to help you at that point. It's already determined, so that doesn't matter. In terms of the MOBA stuff, I think the individual Covenant and Promethean enemies on the map and like your Marine helpers don't matter. They're just kind of window dressing. Yeah. You have the big Covenant bosses, and those are kind of interesting, but depending on the match, you'll either forget they're there entirely, or it's all the two teams will focus on. And then I think there's also an imbalance there where killing them gets you this giant score boost that is way out of whack.
It gives you 150 points.
Out of 1,000.
Yeah, and it's 1,000 points to win. So it gives you over 1/10 of your score in like one big burst.
And finally, so you have these balances of what are the different objectives. And again, a big team mode with multiple objectives, I think, is fine in theory because it will give you things to do and keep the action moving. But because they've put them all on the map at the same time and they're so diffuse around the map, you have these 3 bases you need to capture and then get their core. But at the same time, you have those bosses you need to go fight.
Yeah.
And because
if you ignore the bosses and the other team isn't, like, you're just going to lose because like their points are going to rack up incredibly quickly.
Yeah. So unless you have like the most incredible, like everyone's on their headset and you've got 12 friends and you all know what you're doing, what your roles are, everyone's going to be kind of doing their own thing. And I wouldn't blame other players for doing that because there's so many just individual random things to do. How are you going to coordinate that?
Exactly.
You can't. So it becomes super diffuse. Everyone's doing something different. Either the score doesn't go anywhere or it just kind of racks up on one side at the same time. And either way, no matter what you do, the game just winds up stretching out and feeling really long because there is no cohesiveness to it. For instance, if you're playing big team capture the flag, that has momentum because every time your goal is super clear. I have to get to that base and I have to get the fucking flag, and then I bring the flag back over here. And everyone is clear on what to do, and they may all have different ideas on what to do about it, but that means you're rarely going to get a dull big team capture the flag. You will mostly get dull Warzone.
At the very least, I think you're exactly right. You're never going to get a match, a big team capture the flag, where everyone is just like off shooting different things, like just with no like sense of direction. Like there's I guess like, and here's like what I should be more specific of when I say I'm bored with Warzone. It's honestly, it's not that I'm just bored. It's like it's almost like there's a sense of ennui. Like there is this like meaninglessness to it. Like seriously, of like where I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing, and I don't feel like no matter what I do, nothing I do matters. Like I never feel like I'm contributing because also like it's impossible to try to take one of the bases without a coordinated effort because enemies can just spawn there, and as long as like enemies know to spawn there, it's impossible to take the base because there's just this constant flow of enemies coming in, and it takes you like 30 seconds to get back up to the base. So if like unless there's some sort of like miraculous convergence where your team actually is all like pushing to that base at the same time, that's the only time you ever take that base. And since like I said, it's a miraculous convergence, I feel like I am just constantly butting up against that base because I know in my like my idea of how this match should be going, that's the best objective to go for. But everyone else has a different idea of what the best objective is to go for. So I'm just keep on going against that base, waiting for hopefully enough other players to get that idea too, that then we will take it. But that kind of never happens, and then even when it does happen, it's just like it feels like it's just like an element of chaos, like it's Jeff Goldblum or something. Like I have no control over this. Like things are just happening, and I just exist in this world with explosions going around me. And then I'm going to spawn it. I'm going to use my one Banshee card that I miraculously got from a rec pack. And then as soon as I spawn in it, someone in the Scorpion blows me up. I'm like, well, I'm never going to play in a Banshee again in this mode because I'm never going to spend the money on like the rec packs, and I'm probably never going to play Warzone again.
And you know what? As long as we're being pretentious, I think the best word to use here is it's Sisyphean. You are Sisyphus. You are rolling that rock up the hill, but you're never going to get it to the top, and it's always going to come back down on you. And even if you like win a Warzone match, you don't feel like you've gotten that rock to the top.
Yeah, and it is, and even beyond that, it's like in that one miracle instance that Sisyphus does get the rock to the top, and it just stays on the top of the hill. He's like, why was I even doing this in the first place?
Exactly. Yeah.
What like. I get that I'm in hell, but nobody's actually making me do this. Like, I just had this idea because people tell me I'm Sisyphus, this is what I do, so I've just been doing this whole time. I didn't need to do this. I could have been living my life. Like, I could go do something fun. Like, I could go to join Tantalus and fucking try to pick berries or whatever and never quite do it. Like, there's a lot of other things to do in hell.
Alright, so with all that in mind, there's a alternative version of Warzone, which is called Warzone Assault. And I think this is a much better mode because it is faster paced, it's not as long, and it's just, the objectives are really clear. There's a defending team and there's an attacking team, and the attacking team has to take the first base, and then if they get that, they get to go take the second base, and if they get that, they get to go take the third base. So
it's basically attack, defend, Warzone is like the easiest way to explain it.
Yeah. So at the very least, there is a clear objective. Everyone's working at the same time on that, and I think it plays to more of Halo 5's strengths. On the other hand, it is horrendously unbalanced, because I have only played as the attacking team, and I have only won once, and even that was by the skin of our fucking teeth. You have to be incredibly inept as the defenders to lose that, because you get to respawn in that base as to your heart's content, so that's fine, and we just have to keep getting up to that base, which takes time for one, and then attacking it, and you can only unlock the base when no one else from the other team is there, and you have to be doing that for like 30 seconds to a minute. And so it's very rare that no one else is going to be there, and all the defenders have to do is just kind of stay huddled in a group and attack the attackers, and that's it. And there's no real challenge to it for them, while for the attackers it is incredibly difficult. But even when you win, you don't really feel that much of a sense of accomplishment, because you kind of feel like it was bullshit the whole time.
Yeah, and then I think another key thing with Warzone Assault is that it's only one round. So it's like if you spawn in as the attackers or you spawn in as the defenders, that's it. And you play that, because it takes so long. Like, I feel like Warzone Assault goes a little bit faster than normal Warzone, but still longer than a normal multiplayer Halo game. And so, like, you don't want it to be multiple rounds because it takes so long, and that would just be absurd. But at the same time, it just makes you like wish that you were playing an older Halo game and just playing actual normal Assault, which had multiple rounds, like, which is what makes asynchronous multiplayer work for me. It's the same problem that I had with the new Star Wars Battlefront when I played it on that beta, is that it's like, it's not as big a deal if it's maybe harder to be on the attackers or it's harder to be on the defenders if both teams have to swap those roles multiple times, because then, like, it's the team that one time is able to succeed on the harder side is the team that wins. I think that's, like, it's not, like, super balanced, but it's more balanced, and it feels competitive. Like, it feels like, because we were able to pull out and had this really tight, really well-executed round when the cards were stacked against us, and our opponents were not able to do the same thing, that we were able to win. And there's a real strong sense of competitiveness and accomplishment to that. And it's why, like, when Halo 2 came out, one of the big... Like, the big thing about Halo 2, when they were showing off the multiplayer back in the day, back in fucking 2004, was you had the Zanzibar map, which was obviously the marquee map for Halo 2, and Zanzibar was designed entirely around one flag CTF, which was the new mode. And it was like, let's go into the base, get the flag, and come out, then switch roles and see if you can do it, you know? And I found that mode so much fun. It's one of my favorite things in Halo multiplayer, was the asynchronous modes. And they took them out entirely in Halo 4, and then, like, that trend has continued with Halo 5, where not only are these asynchronous modes not back, other than Warzone Assault, which isn't the same thing, but then they've taken everything else away too, even the non-asynchronous multiplayer, other than Capture the Flag.
I mean, basically, Warzone and Warzone Assault are an attempt to do a bigger version of something I think a lot of people have forgotten about, which was from Halo Reach, Invasion, which was a mode where you either played as the Covenant or as Spartans, and you had some different objectives. And Invasion was a really good match type. It wasn't the most balanced thing in the world because, as you say, it was asynchronous, but not with rounds. And so just, you know, in general, one was harder than the other. But it was fun. I think the teams knew what they had to do. The objectives were clear. It was kind of sequential. It wasn't all these steps that were happening in a mush at the same time. And the Invasion maps were fantastic. The Invasion maps on Halo Reach are great. So Invasion was a really fun thing, and especially if you compare Warzone to that, it just pales in comparison.
Yeah, and the other thing that was really exciting and fun about Invasion was that was the mode where you, when you're on the Covenant side, you play as the elites, and when you're on the human side, you play obviously as the Spartan 3s. And instead of it just being like Halo 2 and Halo 3, where the elites and the Spartans played exactly the same, and then people just had endless arguments about the hitboxes on the different models. It's like, no, the elite's better because he's harder to hit from the back. And it's like, no, the elite's worse because it's easy to hit in the head from the front. And like, what, all those like endless arguments that never had any actual resolution. Instead of trying to crunch the elites down into like the same hitbox as the Spartans, they're like, no, fuck it. Let's just make a mode where you play as the elites, and the elites are different, and they have like different armor abilities. They spawn with different weapons. Their health system is slightly different. Like their shields are charged faster, and they're bigger and like more intimidating. It was like Invasion wasn't balanced, but I feel like the fact that it wasn't balanced was worn on its sleeve. Like it was like, you knew that it wasn't balanced going into Invasion. Like, of course it wasn't balanced, but it not being balanced was part of the fun, and the opportunity to play as a different character type in Halo was really and it's still very novel because nothing else has done that, and it was a lot of fun.
Also, the entire game didn't rest on Invasion.
Exactly. It wasn't like this like huge, like one of the like options on the menu that's like 15% of the menu space was not dedicated to Invasion.
You could very reasonably ignore Invasion for the 3-year lifespan of Halo Reach and not miss it, because you had other things to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what else can we say about the Halo multiplayer? I mean, the argument obviously 343 would make if they were here talking to us is that we live in 2015. Games are iterated upon as they come out, and they will be releasing free map packs and new updates, so they do have a commitment, and I completely believe they have a commitment to improving the game and adding more to it, and that's fine. Yeah. But is that going to be too little too late? And is that fair to consumers?
Yeah, I mean, it's something where... I mean, honestly, this is something where... I was thinking about this in my review. Unless you are a really diehard Halo fan, I don't think you should buy this game right now. Like just straight up, if I was reviewing it on a scale of like the Kotaku thing of like do not buy, just like consider and buy or whatever the middle option is, I would say do not buy, because like whether or not this game is actually worth it to me hinges entirely upon them following up on their promise of keep releasing future modes and maps for free. Which I'm with you. Like I don't suspect that they're not going to do that. I mean, they've straight up just said that the new Forge mode will be added to the game in December. So like I don't think that they're lying or something, and they're just trying to like deceive you. But like I put this line in my review of that in a lot of different games, free content after the fact, like The Witcher 3 had a bunch of free DLC add-ons that were small, added like kind of each week after the game was released for like 12 weeks or something. Like, in that case, that was a fun bonus, and it was in no way essential to the game. It was just, like, a nice, like, cool, like, you're just giving me, like, this one little quest line for free. I'm happy with that. Like, and it's not something I would have ever paid for, but I'm certainly happy to get it for free, and it creates goodwill towards the developer. This is not that case, because for two reasons. One, they put a microtransaction system into the game, like, with those rec packs. It's a $60 full-price game that has microtransactions in it. That's already a very skeevy move. Like, I don't feel like the game is ruined by microtransactions in the way that, like, I don't feel the multiplayer progression is designed to, like, force you to pay money, but it does, like, I mean, that's all, like, that free that pay real money option is always there. That dollar value is always staring you in the face when you go to the
Let me put it this way. If I were rich, if I were a millionaire, I'd buy a shit ton of those because money wouldn't matter to me and I just want to get the helmets. And I think that's like the test. Like, if you had just like unlimited money, of course I would do it that way.
Yeah.
Because why would I play a million multiplayer maps to get the one helmet I might like when I could just pay as much money as I want?
Yeah, so the fact that there are microtransactions in the game means that, like, it's not just a, like, yeah, it's for free, yay! It's like, no, because you are implicitly asking me for money every single time I play this game and look at this one screen that you're going to end up looking at every time you want to unlock new stuff in the multiplayer with in-game currency. You're constantly asking me to pay you money. So no, like, it's not just free. It's the same thing with the Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, which I enjoyed a lot. It's like they released multiplayer maps for free in that multiplayer mode, and everyone was like, yay, it's free. And I was like, no, they're just trying to get you to pay more money for the microtransactions, and you idiots are probably doing it. And it's like, it's nice to get the free content, but it's not just a gift. Like, it is very specifically there to get you to keep on playing the game, to get your eyes on that rec pack screen as often as possible until that one time when you are weak and you're like, it's only $3. It's only $3, and maybe I will finally get a fucking visor that isn't blue because the blue visor looks so fucking stupid. It's driving me crazy. Like, it just is waiting for that one time. The other reason that it's not just like, yay, free content is that in this case, like, this isn't something where it's like a nice bonus. This is like the stuff that they're adding, like Big Team Battle in Forge, is stuff that should be in the game at launch. That, based on the Halo franchise up till now, you would expect there to be in the game at launch. It's not a nice bonus. It's something that should have been there, that they are just pushing off to a future date to get the game out now. And that's all it is. Like, it's not... Like, I can't applaud them for putting the map packs out for free. Like, I just can't bring myself to do it because the game is far too content light compared to not only the series' own standards, but the standards of first-person shooter multiplayer games on the market in general. Like, the game is incredibly content light.
It's just... I think people are going to look back at this era of gaming we are in right now and feel like it was the fucking Dark Ages. Like, where there was humanity before it, and there's going to be humanity after it. But we had this one era where we fucked everything. And I think it's that idea that you can just put a game out in whatever state you fucking please, and you can fix it later. But you know what? There is no game that became a legitimately, like, great, transcendent game by fixing it all later. And I include Destiny in that, because I think Destiny has gotten really good, it's gotten really fun. It's not an all-timer. It's not going on any top 10s. It's probably not going on a top 100. It's become a good game, a fun game, a competent game, but it hasn't become a transcendent game. Yeah. I'm not asking it to be transcendent necessarily. Not every game has to be that. But the point is, that's not how you achieve greatness. And that method is so anti-consumer, and it's getting to a point where I just don't care. I want to go play fucking JRPGs and shit that don't do that can't do that.
Yeah.
Because it is so annoying. And sometimes you get that in the case of something like Assassin's Creed Unity, where it's just broken at launch, which is bad.
Yeah.
But I think in some ways the Halo 5 thing of, we're just going to do these couple of things so we can make a date, and then we'll do the rest of it later, that's almost even worse. Because it is this idea of, the Halo fans are there, they'll pay for anything, we'll get this going, and then at some point we'll make a better game. But again, that's not how you achieve greatness. 5 years ago, this shit would not have flown. And you can't even imagine the era of, when did the real big paradigm-shifting games come out? When they made fucking Ocarina of Time, they didn't get to make the first level, they didn't get to do the Deku Tree and then put the rest out later.
Yeah.
When they did Super Mario 64, they didn't get to do the first level of the castle, and then, we will unlock the second one if you pay us enough in microtransactions, or something like that. That wasn't a thing, and I think that actually incentivizes people, because if you have this thing hanging over you where you can just say, we can just do the bare minimum, or even less than that, and then we'll fix it later, you're never going to achieve greatness like that. You have to actually have some kind of expectation. We're getting to this point where the expectations don't matter, and I think it's part of what has made this generation of console gaming so far such a massive disappointment to a lot of people. I think they've sold a lot, but I think the enthusiasm that I felt maybe in the early days of the 360 or something, I don't think anyone's feeling that.
Yeah.
And I think this one game shouldn't be the bearer for all that, but it does feel kind of like a pressure cooker scenario to me, where once it's affected Halo, I've kind of had the last straw with it.
I mean, and it's something that's especially frustrating that, within, again, I keep on having to go back to Halo 3, because when you think about, or even just Halo 2, it's in Halo 1 to Halo 2, they put so much onto Halo 2 without taking away from what Halo 1 was. They didn't strip out split screen, They didn't make a tiny single player campaign. They didn't take away multiplayer modes. I guess they technically took away race, but race was always really terrible in Halo 1. But they added multiplayer modes, and they added a bunch of different kinds of maps, and they added online multiplayer and matchmaking lobbies and stuff like that. That obviously was not in Halo 1. I mean, it couldn't be, but also if Xbox Live had been a thing in Halo 1, they wouldn't have had the time to implement it. And then Halo 3 is the most insane jump, where Halo 3 has 4-player online co-op for the first time. It has mission scoring. It has all that stuff around mission scoring with the ways that skulls were implemented. That was the first time that had ever been done in a Halo campaign at the time. They had Forge mode, which is the first time that had ever been done. They had Theater mode. That's the first time that had ever been done. They added in the file share system, which is something that Halo 4 didn't have, which is one of the reasons why Halo 4 custom games never became a thing. Is they came up with this interesting way for people to share their different game types and their custom maps with each other. They added in this massive list of different things that you could customize in the multiplayer that, again, allowed you to make any kind of mode you could imagine in the Halo sandbox. You basically were given the power to make. And then they had a large suite of different, interesting, varied maps, more multiplayer modes than there had been before, official support for some fan favorite multiplayer modes like Infection. All of that was put into Halo 3, which was not something that had been in the series before. And now you go to this point, and Halo 5, compared to Halo 4, has fucking nothing. It has almost nothing in terms of number of different modes and the amount of content and the breadth of content and the variety of content. Compared to Halo 4 is almost nothing. And Halo 4 was already pared down from what we had come to expect from Halo 3 and Halo Reach. But with Halo 4, it's fine, because that's the first time 343 Industries had its hands on the series. They were trying to figure it out.
They also only had 2 years of development time.
Exactly. So it's yes, it being pared down is fine. This is their second outing. This is Halo 5. They have had time to do it. They have time to work on it. They pushed the game back. And it is so spare in terms of its content that it's just mind-boggling. You don't even have to compare it to the heyday of the series when Bungie was running it. Even compared to 343's industry standard that they set for themselves, it feels really pared back. It's just insane.
And this is my point. don't fucking tell me that this is the way it has to be, because you had 3 years of development time on Halo 3 and on Halo Reach, and you made those games. And you have 3 years of development time on Halo 5, and I'm not asking for Halo 5 to be Halo 3 or Halo Reach, but it doesn't even feel like Halo at a certain point. It doesn't even feel like a game that really should be sold for $60 at a certain point, and that's ludicrous. And that's the point of, like, this is like a trend in video gaming now, and now it's infected something like Halo, that just boggles my mind, because there's no actual good explanation for it. It's just, at a certain point, laziness and consumer contempt that you can get away with it. And I am sure the people who worked on this game worked very hard. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the overall, like, mission plan for it, it's kind of like, fuck it, is the general aim for most video game designs these days, I feel like, in AAA games. Is like, fuck it, we'll do something and we can figure it out later. And it's like, I'm so excited for November 10th, because we're getting Fallout 4 and Rise of the Tomb Raider, which are like single-player only games.
Yeah.
That I feel like, unless they're like horribly glitchy or something, those will be like breaths of fresh air in the general landscape. Or like, you know, when we had Batman Arkham Knight
at
this
least
summer.
compared to the past few months with like this and Metal Gear Solid 5 both.
Yeah.
I think have similar issues with the way like their content is represented and stuff.
And there have been some very good AAA games this year, some great ones, as you would tell us. But my point is, I mean, what have those games been? They've been like hardcore single-player only things.
Yeah.
No one's doing the multiplayer stuff all that well these days. Maybe you can get like Advanced Warfare, which is fun, but it's not groundbreaking.
Yeah, and it is like Call of Duty does like sort of quietly execute on its mission plan every single year. It is very good at what it does. But you're right, like what's unfortunate is that we're still waiting for something to be far more revolutionary.
How has Call of Duty become the standard bearer again? That's my question. That we have to go back to this series that is so old and kind of frankly rickety that you have to, you know, get mocap Kevin Spacey to spice things up and give everyone a jetpack, and that is now the standard bearer again, because everything else has kind of come and gone and gotten lazy, and they at least with Call of Duty haven't gotten lazy.
Yeah. It's a weird scenario. And it's like, and I keep on like going back to this, like comparing Halo 5 to other games, because I feel like it's the best way for me to express like my feelings on the game and why I'm so disappointed on it, is like, fuck comparing it to Halo 4. Fuck comparing it to Halo 3. Like, let's compare Halo 5 to Halo 1. It has less maps, it has smaller maps, and it has fewer game modes than Halo 1. They didn't even intend for multiplayer to be a thing in Halo 1 originally. Like, that was a feature that they almost scrapped because multiplayer was not something that was expected in first-person shooters. They had no idea. They had no fucking clue when they were making Halo 1 that the multiplayer was going to be a thing. Everything was all in on campaign, because that's how games were back then, because there obviously wasn't online multiplayer for consoles. And even then, even when it was almost a scrapped feature, the multiplayer in Halo 1 is more fully featured than the multiplayer in Halo 5, as long as you excuse the fact that it couldn't have had online. That's the only caveat, and I think that's a fair caveat.
Yes. I mean, people always want to talk about the death of consoles, right? There's always some nut out there talking about the death of gaming consoles, and it's always going to come with the next generation. It never does. But I think you can look at this of like, okay, this is the game, and Microsoft is pinning like all its hopes for the Xbox One on. This is its flagship title for the Xbox One. And just as they've gotten a lot more momentum, they've really fixed this thing. I think they've created them some enthusiasm for the Xbox One, and now this is their big flagship release. And it's kind of a giant wet fart of a game at a certain point. I mean, and I don't want to be too harsh. It, as we've said, does some things incredibly well. But at the same time, if this is the best foot you can put forward, and it's down here, and your best foot forward you put out last time with Halo 3 was way the hell up here, what's happened? What are you expecting? What do you want from us? Do you really want consoles to survive in this form? I'm not sure if I do at a certain point, because I feel like you can get a good single-player experience on anything. But at a certain point, it's the community and the multiplayer stuff that really, I think, is maybe the exciting thing about video game consoles. That these, in the modern online era, should be what it is. And we're also not saying that you can't iterate on a game after it comes out.
Yeah.
Halo 3 and Halo Reach and Halo 4, even to a certain extent, showed that you could.
Yeah.
And even Halo 2 had map packs back in the day. So you can absolutely, but you can't let that be how you make the game good, how you bring it up to the baseline of what people should expect paying their $60.
Yeah, like you should, like I shouldn't have to be in a position where I'm like telling people that I don't think they should buy the game until more of that content comes out. Like the game should have enough content at launch and feel complete enough at launch that I would be comfortable like being happy about my purchase. Because honestly, right now I'm not. Like it's like it's not. Like it's not what it should be. It's not where it needs to be. It doesn't need to have everything that Halo 3 had or everything that Halo Reach had, but it needs to at launch have some of that sort of like representative multiplayer experience that you would come to expect from Halo. Or at least if they want to go so deep into this like arena-based small infantry combat thing, like provide more variety in that space if that's really where you want to go, because they don't even really do that.
All right, we're beating a dead horse at this point, so let's go ahead and move on. And
we need to talk about the campaign before this ends.
This is really where we could just make a wet fart sound and turn the podcast off, because that's pretty much what the campaign is.
Yeah. And the campaign is really why I wrote that review, because it's... The campaign is insane and fascinating to me in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I mean, let's just back up for a second. I think with the multiplayer, our basic analysis is it's got a lot of potential,
yes,
but it's totally unrealized at the moment, or mostly unrealized at the moment. And even if it does get realized down the road, I don't think it's ever going to be to the level of Halo in its heyday. And even if it doesn't need to be, the fact that they didn't really even try to get it there at launch, at least in what they're showing us, is disappointing. And as a fan of the series, that's the biggest thing. That hurt will kind of always be there on this game.
Yeah.
But the campaign is where the hurt really is at.
Yeah.
Because I love the Halo campaigns. This is the seventh one, and I think the other 6 are all great. Mm-hmm. And I think just they are great games. Even Halo 4 and Halo 2, which are probably the weakest in some ways.
They're both rocky in very different ways. They're not tight the way the other Halo campaigns are.
And I really like Halo 4, I should say. I really do. I know I'm maybe on the outside on that, but I recognize the ways in which it's rocky. So, but if that's like the bottom of your barrel, that's a pretty darn good barrel.
Yes, definitely.
Because those are really still good campaigns and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get like the heights of like the Halo 1s, which is just an eternal game. I've played it so many times it'll never get old. Or Halo 3, which is always emotional and awesome. And Halo Reach, same kind of thing, where they mix gameplay and story to this level that is so immersive and frankly goes beyond most first-person shooter experiences you're ever going to see.
Yeah, and you just, I feel like those Halo campaigns are a masterclass in mission design. They are, each mission, not every single mission in every Halo game is amazing, but most of them are really good, and when they hit fucking hard, because they are designed around interesting, unique conceits that keep the level contained and focused around one sort of core idea, and that's different for every single level in that game. Even the bad levels, even your Cortana in Halo 3, that level, which is the worst level I think any Halo campaign has had, at the very least, that level is completely unlike any other level in that entire game.
Even after Halo 5, you would say that about the Cortana level?
Okay, well, let me put a caveat on there. There is no level in Halo 5 memorable enough for me to even think of them as being individual levels.
Okay.
Other than, the only 2 levels that I can think of that are there are 3 levels in the game that I can kind of think of as being levels. There's the first 2 levels, and the Master Chief's second level, which is on the forest planet, or whatever the fuck it's called, because I can't keep all of these proper nouns straight. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even saying that those are good levels. I'm saying that those levels are at least look different. Because, going back to what I wrote in my review, the entirety of Halo 5, with the exception of the first 2 levels, takes place on a rocky planet, a desert planet, and a forest planet, and that's the entirety. And that's what the entire campaign looks like as you move from those 3 aesthetics, and that's the whole thing. And there's a bunch of different levels set in those aesthetics. But if you look at Halo 1, you have the first mission on the Pillar of Autumn, then you land on Halo, and you have the second mission, and that mission is this sort of Ticonderoga pine sort of forest looking thing. Then you have Truth and Reconciliation, which is set at nighttime. And then you go onto a Covenant ship. That looks totally different. Then you have the Silent Cartographer, which is on that more kind of tropical-looking island. Looks totally different. Then you have Assault on the Control Room, which is all icy and the big metal Forerunner bridges. That looks totally different. Then you have 343 Guilty Spark, where you're in a swamp. Looks totally different. All those levels have a different visual aesthetic. And I'm just using Halo 1 because that's the one I can bring to mind the best. But Halo 2 had that as well. Halo 3 definitely had it, and Halo Reach also definitely had it, where different missions looked differently, and they were designed around different ideas. Like Silent Cartographer is, I think, the best example of there's no other mission in any Halo game like Silent Cartographer, where that's the mission where you land on the island, and then you are basically given free reign to wander around the island to accomplish your objectives, and it's kind of a small open world before that was ever a thing. And there's no other fucking mission that's like that. Or the library is... I know people don't like the library. I think it's an interesting mission in Halo 1 because it asks you to do things that the game never asks you to do anywhere else. Like, it is this hardcore fucking gauntlet where of you just going through combat scenario after combat scenario, pushing your way through to the end, and there's no other level in the game like that. And so it feels fresh and interesting whenever you get to that level to me when you're playing the campaign as a set. Halo 5 doesn't have that. Every single mission in Halo 5, for the most part, feels the exact same.
And even, so on the macro level, it's all a blur. I couldn't, as you say, outside of those maybe first 2 levels, I really can't tell any of them apart. I remember a little bit on St. Helios, but not a whole lot. And even then, there's a bunch of missions there that just blur together.
Yeah.
But I think, so that's the macro level, and that's bad. I think it gets even worse when you get to the micro level, and every encounter is pretty much, you're going down, not necessarily a corridor, but a corridor in a larger sense, like it's a straight linear progression, and you just have to push forward through a gauntlet of enemies, and it doesn't really take strategy, it just takes a lot of brute force, and it doesn't have that kind of puzzle element that Halo at its best, and even Halo 4, I think, at its best had.
Yeah, like,
so I know 343 can do it. They're not doing it
Yeah,
here.
for sure. And I just described it as it's your... Every single level in the game is you go down a small hallway that opens up into a slightly bigger room. You kill everyone in that room. Then you go back into another hallway, go through that hallway, go into another big room, kill everyone in that room. And you do that over and over and over again. And then every other level, you get to one area where you have to press a button to defend that area, that some big circular room, from about 3 waves of enemies. And that is the design for every encounter in the game. And then very, very, very occasionally, you get a very small vehicle section that is actually you just driving down what is basically a small linear corridor into a slightly bigger area where you shoot everything in that area. You're just doing it in a car now. Like, there's never any, like, the big, wide open, explorable expanses that I think every Halo game has had at least a couple of levels that had that element to it, you know?
I mean, here's a great example. I think there's a on the surface, a pretty cool fight, like, midway through the game where, are you the chief in that one, where you have to get on the big...
The elevator?
Like, no, not the elevator.
Okay.
It's like the scorpions from... Not the scorpions. What are the things you climb on in Halo 3?
Scarabs.
Scarabs.
Oh,
it's
like Hydra.
The Hydra.
Right,
okay.
yeah.
The Hydra fight. So in the Hydra fight, it's like a really big scarab.
Yeah.
If you haven't played this yet. So, and you have to get in these, like, ships, and you have to board the Hydra, and you have to get in there and do it. And it seems pretty cool, and I had fun with it, and I think it's one of the better encounters in the game.
It's at least memorable.
It's at least memorable. But the way they've done it is they took the scarab and made it so big that once you're on the thing, it just becomes another series of corridors.
Yeah.
And that kind of takes away from what was, like, so fun about the scarab fights, and still is. I never have anything less than a giant grin on my face when I'm fighting a scarab in Halo 3.
Yeah, exactly.
It literally can never get old. We're, 8 years on from that now? Still hasn't gotten old.
Yeah, it's like, it's always bummed me out that no other Halo game has brought that back, where you just have this giant AI-controlled enemy. Because that was the thing that was fun about the scarabs, is in Halo 3, was that they, like, moved around and they attacked you, and they had AI patterns and stuff. And there's so many different ways to approach those in confrontations, whereas the Hydra section in Halo 5, which I agree is it's easily the most memorable set piece, because it's kind of the only really big set piece in the game. But it basically amounts to what you did in Halo 2 the first time the Scarab was introduced, which it was just it's like this level that walks and then it stops and then you get on it and then you play that little tiny level and then you're done. It's like, it's not dynamic in the way that Halo 3 was.
Yeah. And it doesn't have the kind of surprise factor or climactic factor that Halo 2 does, because that's kind of the end of this big part on Earth.
Yeah. And that was the thing that was really well. Again, talking about levels that are designed around specific conceits and objectives that are always clear and interesting and different, is that, that the Earth section in Halo 2, like, they build up the Scarab thing, that you're, like, chasing the Scarab and you see it, like, it shoots blast through, like, the top of the tunnel and shit like that, and, like, it almost steps on you, and you're following it and trying to get to it to defeat the Scarab for that entire level, which creates a sense of identity and flow to that level that I think is really underappreciated, and it's something that simply doesn't exist in most first-person shooters today. And I think, like, to highlight how this aspect of mission design is generally lost and how important it is that, Jonathan, can you think of one mission from... I'm just going to specify to Call of Duty 4.
Okay.
Like, think of one mission from Call of Duty 4.
The one where you're crawling in the camo gear.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And let's make this clear. I did not indicate for you what that was. We did not talk about this beforehand. You just gave me the exact response I wanted, because that is the one mission Call of Duty 4 other than maybe the beginning where you're on the ship, that is designed around a specific, unique aesthetic and a specific, unique mission objective that is constantly apparent to you and is constantly reiterated to you in different ways throughout the mission. It's the ghillie suit part of Call of Duty 4. It's the part of Call of Duty 4's campaign that everyone remembers, and you can't remember anything from any other Call of Duty campaign for the most part, because they're all like Halo 5's campaign, where it's all just stuff that blends together, that occasionally has an impressive set piece that you can kind of remember, but you don't remember anything around the set piece.
Yeah. To be fair, I also remember the scene at the Ferris wheel.
That's part of that thing. That's the end of that mission chain. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so exactly.
Okay, that's a great mission.
Yeah, see? Like, that's the end. That's when you're extracted from that mission. It's still the ghillie suit part.
Now I remember that. Yeah. And I remember the beginning and I remember Mile High Club, but those are kind of like sub-missions. They're not...
Yeah, it's because you're really remembering the introduction and the conclusion to the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in Halo 5 is...
I made your point better without even knowing it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm very satisfied with that. I'm happy that experiment proved successful, because that was like... When I went in to write that review, like, that was kind of one of my core hypotheses around why I found the Halo 5 campaign so dissatisfying, and I think it bears true, that the core mission design lacks that really fascinating creativity and that sense of tightness and control that the designer had over the missions in the old Halo games. It's just not here at all.
Now, here's the thing. So all that being said, none of that alone, I think, makes this a bad campaign.
No, yeah, because like I said, most first-person shooters don't have that structure, and so there are plenty of first-person shooter campaigns that I really like that don't have that. I think they would be better if more companies approached their level design like that, but they can still be totally fun and enjoyable.
Yeah, totally. So that's kind of the basics. Where does this become really disappointing? I think is in the story and the execution of the story within the game. Because Halo has always been so narrative-driven and in such smart ways, where it's all very experiential, but you feel a very emotional attachment to the characters. Even before the Chief spoke in the levels, in the days of Halo 1, 2, 3, and you only heard him in cutscenes. Boy, did you love the Chief, and boy, did the Chief come across as a fucking character to you. And Cortana is... I think in the all-time Hall of Fame top 10 video game characters, and she just has a place there.
I absolutely agree, because she's not only, I think she's really fun and interesting, but she is easily the best version I've ever seen of the most critical character archetype for a first-person shooter, which is the voice in the ear.
Yes.
And it's like, there's some other really notable examples, like Atlas from BioShock, I think, is obviously, he's a really fascinating character. But even then, like, that's a little special example, because BioShock actually has a handful of those kinds of characters that are introduced to you over the course of the campaign. Whereas Cortana is, for the most part, in all of Halo, like, is kind of with you. In Halo 3, obviously, she has, like, the phantasmal sort of, like, interruptions, but it's like she's still present, and for most of the games, she is giving you your objectives and telling you what you need to do. And that's a very practical, functional role for the character to occupy. And so for the character to occupy that role and be funny and memorable is a real achievement in writing, because most games do not have that. Like, most games, I remember Anya from Gears of War only because I always loved how John DiMaggio just went, Anya. And that's it. Like, that's all the only reason I remember that character exists is because I love the way fucking John DiMaggio says Anya. But that's it. Like, she's not a funny, interesting character, but, like, Cortana really is. And that moment in Halo 1's campaign where you have to leave Cortana to go investigate the Flood stuff is a really fascinating moment, because that's the first moment where you get an objective and Cortana's not explaining your objective to you, and you're like, oh, I'm alone, and it creates this sense of solitude. Like, Cortana, I think, is a very underrated character because of how well she's used in a practical sense and in an aesthetic sense.
Absolutely. And based on the evidence of Halo 4... it seemed like 343 got Cortana.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Because Halo 4 very subtly but very importantly kind of reconfigures how you experience Halo, because you have the Chief talking now, and you have some other voices in your ears that are also crucial.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean they got rid of Cortana's importance. Like, she's still, if anything, that kind of freed her a little bit to become even more of a character, and it freed the Chief to become a little more of a character. And I think there are things about the Halo 4 campaign that are a little rocky, like not introducing the core villain.
Yeah.
That's weird. But that ultimately doesn't matter to me all that much, because what Halo 4 is about is those characters, and that relationship is sketched so beautifully in Halo 4 and pays off on everything I think those characters were and what they were about, and in some ways very specifically subverts our expectations of the role of the Chief and Cortana to make it that hyper-emotional state you're in. And it does that all so well, you're thinking, okay, no matter what, 343 gets the Chief and it gets Cortana, and how can they can't fuck up a campaign if they get those two things, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Turns out they can, because guess what? If you make a Halo 5 where the Chief is barely in it, and when he's in it, he doesn't really interact with Cortana, and when Cortana's in it, she's not acting like herself, and then a bunch of shit happens that makes absolutely no sense, you've suddenly really pissed all over Halo.
Yeah, I mean, to put it like succinctly, like the Halo 5 story has nothing to do with the Halo story. Like, it has nothing to do with the Master Chief for the most part. Like, things do get moved in like a very incremental fashion by the end of the game. Like, there is a little toddler step made forward in the overall plotline, but the vast majority of the time you spend in the game is not as the Master Chief, it's as Spartan Locke trying to get to the Master Chief, while the Master Chief is over in the place where all the main plot is meant to be going on, and you're trying to get back there, basically for the whole game. It's like there's that one
You're literally spinning in place.
Yeah, it's like there is that one just excruciating moment where the Master, you have that one level as the Master Chief on the Forest Planet thingy, whatever that Forerunner thing is. And then you get to the end, and like now like Cortana's role in the story is starting to be revealed, and like Master Chief's going to go there, and then you cut back to Locke, and then you have that whole section on St. Helios that is fun because you're fighting Covenant for basically that whole section, and the Covenant are far more interesting to fight than Prometheans ever have been.
And you've got characters like the Arbiter who actually pop as characters.
Yeah. So like it's kind of fun in that sense, but it's also just fucking destroying. That it's like, this has nothing to do. There is no like overall narrative work being accomplished here because there's no character development going on. Like, it's fun to see Arbiter, but it's not like they're doing anything with Arbiter other than like showing that he's in this new like sort of like stage of his life with the Covenant Civil War. Like, I guess that's kind of a thing, but that's just his character introduction. Like, they never do anything with any of that stuff, and all you are doing on St. Helios is the exact same thing you were doing on the previous planet, I think Meridian or whatever it's called, which is going and finding one of those Guardians to figure out what the fuck's going on. Like, you were doing the exact same thing again. It's like, thank God that they didn't just be like, well, let's make 5 more levels where Locke just goes to another planet to find another Guardian so that hopefully he can get injected into the main plot at some point. It's insane how much time they waste and how little is accomplished over the course of the story.
I mean, here's how I put it when I finished the game and kind of was thinking back on it. You could have taken the entire substance of the story of Halo 5 and still told it through the Chief in exactly what he's doing, and it would be way tighter and way better, which means the entire central conceit of the plot is just to obfuscate and to
elongate?
Elongate. There it is. Sorry.
To get longer.
I've had a rough week. Anyway, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And Halo 5 has pissed me off. So, anyway, yeah. And I'm right on that, right? Like, that's just all it is.
In my review, I described it as Halo 2 has a parallel plot structure, which some people didn't like. I thought was very interesting with the Master Chief and the Arbiter. It's like Halo 5 makes this really fascinating, bold step where they're like, fuck parallel plot lines. Let's do a perpendicular plot line. Let's have the Master Chief be going straight forward, and Locke is like off at a 90-degree angle doing fucking jack shit for the whole story. And like, that is really, like, if you're mapping out the story, that is basically how it ends up coming across. Is that Locke and Master Chief are kind of going in the same direction for like the first couple of missions, and then Locke just is like, well, this game is going to be like 2 hours long if I don't just go fucking do random bullshit for 5 hours. And actually, that's being generous, because I finished the campaign in about 6.5 hours, which is also, it's the shortest campaign in the game, or in the franchise as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's even shorter than Halo 3 ODST, like, or it's about the same length.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, here's the thing. I'm just going to brush on this quickly because I don't want to get bogged down in it. But I have played a couple of the levels on Legendary now, and that's one of the things that would always elongate.
Yes.
There we go. A Halo game is that you would get to go back and play on Legendary, and that could, take weeks maybe if you did it right. Like Halo Reach takes a long time to beat on Legendary because you've really got to puzzle it out.
But that's like a level a day kind of thing, playing Halo Reach on Legendary.
But you don't get you don't hate yourself for it, and you don't hate the game. It's really fun. And I think even ODST has a great Legendary campaign if you do it that way.
Yeah.
So ODST is a little on the short side for a Halo game, but that ultimately doesn't matter because it's very rich, and once you kick it up to that highest setting, it gets even richer.
Yeah, and it's obviously, ODST is designed to be a shorter campaign. It's like everything around it, it's like, it is better because it's a shorter campaign, because it's tighter and it's very character focused, and it's I think it's one of the best campaigns the Halo games have had.
Yes, but Halo 5, you kick it up to Legendary, and it's basically just unplayable. It's just, it exposes all these flaws in the gameplay and in the level design that make it hard, not in ways that are fun or tricky or any of that. They're just cheap. It's got bad checkpointing, so you'll just... I mean, you saw me yesterday. I got checkpointed, and a fucking hunter was about to kill me.
Yeah.
And that's where it fucking checkpointed. And you have this AI that basically how they make Legendary hard, because we haven't mentioned it yet, but you have this thing where you have a 4-player co-op, and your squad mates are with you whether or not you have someone controlling them or not. So the AI is really important, because when you fall in battle, you don't just go back to your checkpoint. A squad mate can come and revive you. So if you're playing on your own, you have these 3 AI squad mates you have to rely on to get back up. And what they do on Legendary is they basically just make the AI mentally retarded. They don't know what they're doing. They run... seriously, they just run at walls. They run in circles. They don't attack the enemies. They don't come to get you when you fall down. Or if they do, you fall down, they you're on top of a box. They can't get to you because even though they have clamber, they can't figure out how to get up on the fucking box.
Yeah, their pathfinding is really poor.
Yeah. So in Legendary, it's just you die and then you have to wait 30 seconds for yourself to die again while you watch the AI be idiots. So it makes it extra frustrating because they're just rubbing your goddamn nose in it. And then, so it's just, the Legendary is just, it's unappealing. It would take a really long time to beat, but not because of any good qualities. And I think that's kind of the ultimate test of, like, a Halo game should be at its best on Legendary.
Yeah, it should be incredibly difficult, but in an incredibly satisfying and very fair way.
Yeah.
I haven't really tried Halo 5 on Legendary. I probably won't, because it's like, even without you telling me that the difficulty isn't fun, like, I just don't think Halo 5's campaign is interesting enough to really warrant a replay.
Yeah. And it's too bad, because the other Halo campaigns I've replayed more times than I can count.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, there's a reason why everyone uses Reach as that icon when you want to reference a Halo game on Legendary, because Reach was, like, masterful on that level when you got into it. There's just... Everyone talks about how you have to go hit that fucking button, because that button encounter is brilliant.
Yeah, it's just brutal, and you're just like, I need to find some way to just, like, circumnavigate this map so I can get around these motherfuckers. Yeah.
And, and I think one of the other things, just, again, comparing it to Reach, like, Reach on Legendary feels at its best also because it, like, mirrors the story, which is this hopeless scenario where you are at your limits, you've never been tested like this, and you know it's leading to death. And Reach on Legendary makes you feel the story so much more powerfully. Halo 5 on Legendary makes you feel the story is just a joke, because it's like, man, Spartan Locke sucks.
Yeah.
Man, the Chief got really lame for some reason without Cortana. He cannot fight. And it just makes you laugh. So that's all bullshit.
I mean, and it's also like going back to the AI squad mates, since we hadn't really touched on that before.
So bad.
Like their AI is really terrible, and it's something where it sort of echoes this game that I really love, which is Star Wars Republic Commando, and it like deliberately echoes it because the creative designer on Halo 5 worked on Republic Commando. So like it's very deliberately that sort of thing where Republic Commando was all designed around this idea of like you are this commando leading a squad of other commandos, and like you had all these, I mean, you had a much more full sort of set of abilities that you could tell them to do, of like post up on this wall to like snipe over into this area, and it's like you get on this wall and be grenading, and you go ahead and like you hack that door to open the door, and like you were executing these like complex plans, and there's none of that in the Halo 5 with the squad mates. Like you're basically given a move here / attack this, which like switches toggles depending on what you are looking at, and then you have a very Republic Commando, just like visually designed Republic Commando-esque revive thing. But even beyond that, I think it's pretty astounding, or it's not necessarily astounding, it makes perfect sense why they introduce 6 new characters with the squad mates, because Master Chief and Buck are obviously returning from Halo, all of Halo and then ODST. But you introduce all these 6 new characters, and none of them are interesting, and none of them get any character development in the slightest. Like Team Osiris, there is maybe some hint of like Spartan Laura Bailey maybe being someone like interesting to find out more about, because she can speak Sanghelios and stuff, and they like there's like a line of dialogue, like one addressing that fact, and that's basically it. And I can't really tell you anything about Tanaka. The only thing I can remember about Spartan Buck is that it's Nathan Fillion, and he doesn't even really, I mean, he doesn't get, there's no like sort of continuation of like his character arc from ODST or something. If you're someone who wants to see that, this is not the game for you, because Buck's in it, but Buck doesn't have anything to do in it. Like he has a couple of sarcastic lines.
Let's put it this way: Nathan Fillion was better used in Destiny than he was here, and Destiny was a game without a story.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you get to like the biggest just fucking paper cutout character, the wet blanket that is Spartan Locke, that you are playing for the majority of the game as if you're playing it single player or like have to play him in co-op. And it's like Spartan Locke is the most just uninspired, cliche military character you can think of. Like, just picture in your head, like, hard-ass military guy. That's Spartan Locke. Like, everything about him is just Spartan Locke. In fact, you probably imagined a more fleshed-out character than what they actually get around to doing with Spartan Locke.
He's more interesting on the fucking box where he's staring at Master Chief.
He's more he's literally more interesting in the commercial.
Yes.
Than he is in the game. He gets more dialogue, I think, in that one fucking commercial than he does in the game. Like,
yeah.
It's insane. Like, they don't make any effort into developing him or his team at all. And then on the Master Chief side, you get the blue team, which are characters from the books. You have Kelly, Linda, and Fred, which if you've read Fall of Reach, like, and you really enjoyed it like me, you probably really like those characters. Like, I've always really thought, particularly Kelly and Linda, were really memorable, interesting characters from those books. It's like they're completely wasted. There's no real effort to bring any of their personalities or unique identities from the book in here. Like, all you get is that you can look, and it's like Linda is carrying a sniper rifle with her. She doesn't ever really use it. I think Kelly has, like, a thing that makes it so that she can sprint more, like an armor mod or something. And if you play as her in co-op, but it's never apparent because her, like, she was the fastest Spartan. That was one of her things from the books. But if you are a big fan of the books and those characters, and, like, there's nothing for you here, and it's really disappointing that they finally made that step that it felt like they're kind of building towards for a while of integrating the book characters into the games, because as soon as you knew that, oh, there are other Spartan 2s in the world that still are alive over the course of the Halo games, you kind of are curious how come they're never interjected into the Halo or the main game plot lines.
And how great a game could this have been if okay, so Halo 4 ends, Cortana's dead, the Chief's best friend, his other half is gone, and now he's with his old friends, and he has to do a mission with them. Even if it wasn't related to Cortana, if she wasn't in the game at all, you didn't even hear Jen Taylor, that could be a great game, because it would be the Chief having to work with that absence with these characters who are also part of him. That could be great, but they didn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, they don't even really make any effort to introduce their characters in any way. If you're someone who has not read Halo Fall of Reach or any of the other books in which those characters appear, like, you are going to have no context for who they are, because the game just simply... I mean, the writers working at 343 Industries simply do not seem to give a shit about anyone who is not absolutely dedicated to, like, consuming every single piece of Halo Expanded Universe material that exists, because... Like, I am someone who has read... I have read 5 Halo novels, and I have read 1 collection of comic book stories. And I have no idea what, like, the specifics of what happens in the course of Halo 5, basically. Like, there are whole conversations that happen in Halo 5 that, like, I am completely lost, and I have no idea what anyone's talking about. It's like, there should not be a franchise that exists where it's like... I have read some of the books and I don't understand what is going on in the main thing. Like, imagine how insane it would be if in Star Wars 7, if Star Wars 7 was, like, set in the middle of, like, the Yuzon Vong invasion from the books or something, and, like, Jaina and Jason Solo are just characters there, and, like, you're just supposed to pick it up and be like, oh yeah, well, he's fucking Leia and Han's son, and he's Jaina is his twin sister, and he fell to the dark side. That happened in this book, and now he and Jaina have to fight, and, like, it would be fucking madness if they tried to do that. I mean, that's basically what this is.
Let me put it this way. I mean, I've mentioned it before on the podcast, Star Wars superfan Robbie. Robbie has literally read every Star Wars Expanded Universe novel. And I'm not saying...
That's insane.
I'm not saying he's read a lot. I'm not saying he's read a majority. He made a mission for himself before the date where they reset the canon to read every single one of them, and he did it. It was a 30-year project, and he did it.
Shit!
And he's excited that there's new stuff, because he would not want a movie that did all that Expanded Universe stuff, because why would you?
Yeah, exactly. It's like...
So I don't even think... Even the people... What I'm saying is even the people they're aiming at with Halo 5, who have read everything, they're not going to be satisfied by this either, because probably the things they find interesting in there aren't fleshed out, they're just name-dropped. Yeah. And that's not the same thing. Like, even if they made Star Wars 7 and had Han's kids from the books, it wouldn't be the same, because they're not the people you have in your head from that decades-long relationship in text. It wouldn't be satisfying. J.J. Abrams has to make something new, because what the hell else could you do? Just like with Halo, traditionally you have to keep it separate from the expanded universe, or if they're going to link up, have them link up casually, like where reading them helps you, but it isn't fucking required.
Yeah, or if you're going to interject characters like Kelly, Lynn, and Fred into your main game continuity, you have to introduce them. They can't just pop up the fuck out of nowhere with no introduction. I mean, it's the exact problem that they had with the Didact, where you have this character that is introduced, Cortana addresses him by name, and there has never been a point in the Halo storyline, if you have played all the games, where Cortana could possibly know what his name is. And it's like, you as the audience don't know what his name is, and you have been following these characters for, like, that main continuity, and it's like, there's this massive disconnect between what the characters should know, what the audience should know, and what is being actually presented on screen to you.
And, in Halo 4, it was just kind of a minor inconvenience. Here, it cripples the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because basically, so we'll get into the story in just a sec.
Yeah.
I want to say one other thing before we get to that. Let's finish talking about gameplay.
All right.
Because with that co-op stuff, like the 4-player stuff, I think when you're playing it in single player, it's just a giant drag. Because you would much rather have... Because one of the things they've done is your time to death is way lower in this game because you can get revived. Fine in theory, but what happens in single players, the AI is so bad, you really just wish you had slightly more health and then no AI teammates, Yeah. But then in co-op, it is kind of fun. Like, I like that they've made it a little more co-op centric, but at the same time, I was playing with my brother Thomas, and we have played all the games in the Halo series on co-op multiple times. This is how I play Halo.
Yeah.
And I wished we had 4 people. I've never wished that. But it felt like you're supposed to have 4 people playing this. And at that point, I think the Halo 5 campaign might be pretty fun, but that shouldn't be a requirement.
No, yeah.
Like, it's really nice that Halo 4, or Halo 3, had the 4-player co-op, and that was cool, but it wasn't a requirement. The Arbiter called some more alien buddies over, and you played, and it was fun, but it wasn't required. And then, like, I think in Halo Reach, they had the 4-player online co-op where you could do matchmaking on it, and that was really cool just to kind of see the levels in those lights. But again, it didn't make the game better or worse, it just made it different.
Yeah.
Here it's like, I feel like you're almost... That's what they want you to have, and how many people are honestly going to be able to do that? Again, because there's no matchmaking for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and like organizing a group of people, like 3 other people to all play through this campaign, it's just a hassle.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like the game should be designed around it.
At the end of the day, I wish it was just Chief and Other Chief, his clone.
Exactly, yeah, secret Shadow Chief who only spawns up in alternate universes or something, however that works.
If they published an expanded universe book called Shadow Chief and explaining this, I would buy that.
Yeah.
And I would read most of it, probably.
If it was written by Eric Nyland, I'd be all for it.
Oh, he could make it work. Yeah, he could make it work. Anyway, but yeah, so let's talk about the story. The quote-unquote story, air quotes.
Yes.
Because there's really nothing. I mean, for most of the game, there is no story. You're just Locke running in circles while the Chief is off doing the story. And then when you get to the stuff with the Chief story, there are pieces there that you could do well. I think the idea of Cortana turning into a villain and the Chief kind of having to question his faith and everything as a result of it could work. I don't think it's guaranteed to work. I think you would have to put in some fucking effort to that, and some hard effort. But it could. Doing it as lazily as they do and turning Cortana into a villain this willy-nilly feels frankly like sacrilege. It really does feel like just taking one of the great video game characters and just abusing her. Like, just using her for your own ends to just kind of create false tension without anything there. And again, these are the same people who made Halo 4, where all of that stuff with Cortana was just, it made your heart ache.
Yeah.
And then you get into this, and it's just, you learn nothing about her motivations, you learn nothing about where she's been. For most of the game, I thought she was a fake, and the Chief was going to find out it was some trap by the resurrected Didact or something, which would have at least been better than what they did.
Yeah.
But no, it's we're just supposed to accept that it's Cortana, and she isn't acting or speaking or doing anything like Cortana. And again, maybe they could fill in those gaps if they tried, but basically there's none of it. The Chief and Cortana have one short scene together, and it's by far the best cutscene in the game.
Yeah.
But it's not much because it hasn't been earned and it's not followed up on.
Yeah, and it's something where overall, I just found, it was where I realized that the story was uh-oh, this is turning really bad. It was the first mission you end and they just took all this what was not very good story material from the Spartan Ops, but was still the setup for Halo 5 happened in Spartan Ops with Halsey being captured by that one elite guy. And they just basically just go like, fuck all that. Like, fuck that thing where it's like Halsey was going to be a traitor to the UNSC. Whatever. Who fucking cares? This one guy that, like, this one fucking Covenant dude who we had set up so painstakingly to be, like, some sort of villain that obviously would act as, like, a good counterpoint and, like, someone for the Arbiter to fight against, because it's the Covenant guy and Arbiter, who's the guy who's trying to destroy the remnants of the Covenant. Like, no, fuck that. Like, let's just kill him off. Let's just end it. Like,
it would be like if Return of the Jedi started with Han and Luke running away from Jabba's palace, and Han going, "Man, that was a crazy adventure, wasn't it, buddy?"
Yeah.
And then for the rest of the movie, they go learn to play the banjo or something. Just a total non sequitur.
Yeah, exactly. And it's and then so that's already bad, but whatever. Like, sure, you're just like you didn't want to follow that plot thread, so you're just ejecting it. That happens. Like, I don't think it's obviously it's not desirable. But sometimes it's necessary, and there have definitely been instances on like TV shows and stuff like that where they have just abandoned storylines immediately when it wasn't working out, and they're able to recover. So it's like that's not like a death knell or something. But then in the second mission, like halfway through the second mission, Master Chief falls down a pit basically, and then has what I would be inclined to call a hallucination, but is clearly actually some sort of psychic vision that he is given by Cortana. Which is like, I'm on Meridian, go to Meridian Prime. Help me, Master Chief, you're the only one. You're
my only hope.
Yeah, it's like basically that, and I was so...
confused.
I was just flabbergasted by the whole sequence, because, like, it had been a while since I played Halo 4, but I had a very, very strong impression that at the end of Halo 4, Cortana died. Like, there was not don't make a girl a promise if you know you can't keep it moment from Halo 2 of like, oh, I'm coming back for you. Like, you're still in this place and I'm going to get you. That was not the end of Halo 4. Halo 4 was like, you are going insane and like you are dropping into like space or something. Like, this is over. Like, you are dead and we can write a way to bring the character back.
I've played Halo 4 twice this year.
Yeah,
and so I can tell you definitively it's death. Like, she
dies,
says,
right?
She dies. They have a scene together where she says, I had to pull you in here so we could say our goodbyes.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. And then she's gone, and the Chief holds her broken AI chip. I mean, she is dead as dead could be.
Yeah, so they fucking kill Cortana in Halo 4. It's like, and it's a really strong, powerful moment. And it was like all the marketing, like, remember when Halo 5 was, like, first revealed, was that cutscene of the Chief cloaked, walking through the desert, and then he has Cortana's AI chip in his hand on, like, a necklace that he looks at, and then, like, the Guardian thing pops out of the sand in the desert. It's, like, a really good teaser and a really cool way to announce the game, indicating that's the direction they're going on, is that the Master Chief is trying to find some way to bring Cortana back. And with Cortana being an AI, I think there are a lot of ways where you could convincingly bring that character back in, like, a Search for Spock kind of manner, you know?
Yes.
Like, it's like, I'm not mad that they didn't keep Cortana dead. I didn't expect Cortana to stay dead, but like, there's a lot of setup that needs to happen to bring a character back to life, and it's like Master Chief just sees this vision, and then all of his Spartan Blue team comes up, and Master Chief just basically goes, "It was Cortana. She's on Meridian Prime." And then Fred and Lyndon Kelly are like, "Really? Well, I guess we should go get her." And it's like, that's basically the entire conversation. You're like, hold on, how do you three, like, another instance of, like, I don't really understand how you three know anything about Cortana. Like, there's, obviously they probably would, but you need, since they never interacted with her in the books, it's like, and these characters have never been introduced in the games, like, I don't understand what their relationship to Cortana is at all, so you need to set that up before they're just like, well, okay, and then I feel like Master Chief would be maybe slightly more skeptical about this vision he had when he fell like 50 feet and dropped on his head. I mean, about his dead girlfriend telling him to go to some random planet.
It's so shitty because one of the things they did so well in Halo 4 is they honed in on something that was always there with the Chief, but just was part of the subtext, but they made text, which is that he's smart. He is not just a guy in a suit. He is very intelligent.
Yes.
And he and Cortana get along the way they do because they both have a very fierce intellect to them. And obviously the Chief is more, the bronze of the outfit, but and he also has like brain.
Yeah, he has like this tactical.
Yes.
I mean, he's a military genius. Like, he has to be the guy that he is.
Yeah. The Master Chief we know would not do anything he does in this game. No. Just frankly, not a single action he takes he would do because he's smarter than that.
Yeah.
I do think if he saw that kind of vision, he would interrogate it, but he wouldn't just blindly go after it. That's not what anyone in that situation would do, let alone a military genius.
Yeah, like, it feels like because the Master Chief was on kind of such rocky emotional territory by the end of Halo 4, where, I mean, because they brought in some of that stuff from the Spartan 2 program of, like, I mean, he is this, like, intensely emotionally abused person because he was kidnapped as a child and forced into the Super Soldier program, where, like, he spent his life learning how to kill people and, like, was experimented on, and most of the other people that got those experiments died as a result, and he's, like, one of, like, the 100 or so that actually survived. Like, his backstory is incredibly tragic, and they brought elements of that into Halo 4 to make it then that when Cortana dies, you realize that, like, how impactful that must be for this character, because it's the first, like, other person outside of the Spartans and Halsey that he has ever really interacted with and become emotionally attached to, and he's more emotionally attached to her than he is with anyone else. And it's like, and that's a very compelling story, and I think the setup is then that, like, he's not in his right mind, but because, like, he's lost her, but they don't set that up because there's, I think, a quality of soul searching that needs to be a part of that character arc that they just don't do. Like, there's no question. There's never there's no hesitation at all about it's like, no, Cortana's alive, she's on Meridian Prime, let's go. As if it was like Halo 2 and it's like, no, she's on High Charity, like, I know that's where I left her, let's just go pick her up, and I've been getting these visions. Like, it's really bizarre, and it was that moment that, like, just, you realize, oh, they aren't really trying. And that's what the feeling is. It's like they're not actually really trying with the story. It's like, it feels like there was a version of the story where they were trying, and that's the version of the story which was marketed to us with both that reveal and all the Spartan Lock stuff. But along the way, stuff must have gotten cut out, and they just pared back the story until you get this just like, well, Cortana's out there, let's go find her. Oh, she's evil. I guess the game's over. And that's the entire plot. Like, that's the plot of the game. I just told it to you.
And here's the thing. So, I obviously go into a Halo game with a lot of optimism. I want to like it. And I always will give it the benefit of the doubt. So, now that I think back on my experience playing Halo 5, I was fucking pathetic with it. Because it was like, I was like me in high school with a girl I liked or something. Of like hoping she liked me and like keeping that hope alive until I realized there was nothing there. And that's what it was with Halo 5, where I kept, after every mission, I was like, okay, there are a lot of warning signs there, but maybe it'll get better. You know, we're only 2 levels in. Maybe there's something more to this we just haven't seen yet. Okay, let's keep going. And you know what? That cutscene, it looked good. It's well directed.
Sure.
The game plays well. Maybe this will be good. And then it's like, okay, we're halfway through the game. We've only played as the Chief once. And Spartan Locke is not really a character. But, you know, we've gone to some different locations. We're going to go after the Arbiter. Maybe the Arbiter knows something. Maybe that'll really kick things into higher gear. I don't know. And Cortana, we still have yet to meet her. Maybe there'll be something really interesting there. And then you finally get to the scene where the Master Chief meets Cortana. It's like, okay, well, this is a little too late. But, you know, it's something, and there's still a couple levels left. So maybe this can really... And then he's on the ship with her, and she's kidnapped him, and now I'm Locke trying to get them, and maybe they're going to do something cool where, like, Locke fails, and then the Chief, there's going to be some big twist, and that twist will kind of put the game in a new light, and then the game's just over and nothing happened, and I didn't even feel angry. I just kind of felt heartbroken of it's like, there was nothing there. You were leading me along for a really long time, and there was nothing. And for a Halo game to go that long with just nothing, with all these elements that are so inherently filled with meaning and potential, that is the essence of disappointing to me. You know, it's like looking at like a friend or a child or something. It's like, I'm not really mad at you. I'm just disappointed because you could have done so much better.
Yeah, because the setup from Halo 4 was so good. I felt like you guys knew what you were doing. You knew what you were doing at one point in terms of the story. It's like there were a couple of missteps, like with the Didact in Halo 4, but overall it was a really strong character-based story, the likes of which, like, we had not gotten with Master Chief and Cortana, and then fucking Halo 5 comes out, and you're like, they just... Like, it's so bad. Like, I can't express how bad the story is in this game. And it's so bizarre, because I feel like the trend over the past couple of years is that the average quality of writing in games has gotten so much better compared to what it was, like, 5 years ago. Like, go play, like, Wolfenstein: The New Order. That's a fantastic single-player first-person shooter that has a really interesting story that tackles a lot of broad, interesting philosophical themes, has very well-developed characters. Like, it's not the greatest story ever, but, like, enjoyed it, and it was well written, and it was compelling. Like, it was a story that I could write a small essay on, which is not what you can say for most video games made like 5 to 10 years ago and before that. Like, the average quality of writing in games has gotten so much better. It's so weird that Halo, I've always thought, was, not like the greatest, but it was a much better was in a much better place in terms of writing than a lot of other first-person shooters like Call of Duty just didn't care.
Let's put it this way. We talked earlier in our Dragon Ball Z discussion about when Dragon Ball Z is on, it does something nothing else does. Mm-hmm. And when Halo is on, I would say the same thing.
I agree, yeah.
It's not necessarily telling the best story out there, but no one else is telling a story quite like it in the way it's telling it.
Yeah.
And this doesn't feel special in any way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I mean, it's so weird that I can look at this game and I can look at, like, most of the other first-person shooters I've played and be like, this has, like, kind of the worst. I mean, honestly, if you're counting the Taken King, because Vanilla Destiny is a different story in a lot of different ways, kind of non-intended. But if you're including what they did with the story in Taken King, Destiny has a better story than Halo 5. Like,
maybe even if you don't count the Taken King.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to even qualify it.
Because Destiny isn't built on characters I love.
Yeah.
It kind of comes down to that. I don't know. And you're right. I mean, it basically didn't have a story. But you know what? Halo 5 kind of doesn't have a story.
Yeah. And then, like, Far Cry 4... Far Cry 4 has a better story than Halo 5. Far Cry 3 has a fucking just insane, just, like, fucking mess of a story by the end. Hey, Far Cry 3 has a better story than Halo 5.
Assassin's Creed 4, a series that was not known for good writing, did something pretty goddamn compelling.
Yeah. It's like, and, like, I can't remember that much about the story of Call of Duty Advanced Warfare because Call of Duty's never been good at storytelling, but, like, I kind of have the feeling that Call of Duty Advanced Warfare had a better story than Halo 5, and I just wasn't paying that much attention because I didn't care, but I feel like if I had paid attention, like, at the very least, like, Cyber Kevin Spacey is he's a fun, compelling antagonist.
And I would venture a guess that his motives are clearer than Cortana's.
Yeah, I mean, he just wants to take over the world with his private military company. It's like, it's the same story that, like, every modern military shooter tells by the end, but it's a story. Like, it's more comprehensible. It's like, it has a stronger sense of arcing, certainly, than Halo 5 story has. It's like, it's just so bizarre. Because, again, I feel like I've been so happy over the past few years, at least with the way that writing has improved in video games across the board in genres that traditionally have just not cared about it, like first-person shooters. And it's so weird that I'm playing Halo 5 and I'm like, this feels like a first-person shooter from like 2001 or 2002 that did not care about its story. And just like had the story in it because it was obligatory and not because they wanted it to be good.
Yeah, and it's weird because we're doing this like back-to-back with Metal Gear Solid 5. So the two fives this fall, which basically have no stories, and the story they do tell is infuriating. But as you say, it's extra frustrating because the overall quality of game storytelling is great. Like this year we've had The Witcher 3 and Batman Arkham Knight. And we're going to have Fallout 4, which I'm sure will have some interesting stuff. And Rise of the Tomb Raider, which probably will. And Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which everyone likes the story on.
Yeah. And even Bloodborne, in its own really unique way, has a very fascinating story. Yes. Like, it's a very abstract story, but it's a way better story than what Halo 5 has because it's abstract.
Yes. So, and not every game has to have narratives. I've always said, we've talked about this a lot. It's dangerous to get into that mode where you say a game has to have a story, but Halo does have to have a story. If you're putting the name Halo on your game box, it's kind of funny that in all the ways they promised reinventing Halo with Halo 5, the way they reinvented it the most was to not tell us a Halo story.
Yeah.
And that, I say that, and I kind of want to go fucking hang myself, because that sounds so depressing when I put it into words.
Yeah, and it really is something where, I mean, you only play as the Master Chief for 3 missions. I don't think we have specified that yet. So, like, if you're thinking about, like, it's going to have, like, a Master Chief Arbiter level split, nope. Like, it is way worse than that. Like, you almost never play as the Master Chief. And the Arbiter was a really interesting character in Halo 2.
Yes.
It's like, they put a lot of effort into developing him. Like, the story stuff, while it got messy towards the end in Halo 2, is actually really, like, sort of exploratory and interesting and experimental, especially for the time in video games, with its parallel plot structure.
I mean, frankly, in Halo 2, Arbiter has a more interesting story going on than the Chief does, because the Chief and Cortana are at a point where they're kind of at a plateau as characters. They're very secure. The Arbiter is the one with the arc in Halo 2.
And, I mean, when you get down to it, like, the opening cutscenes and first level of Halo 2 so far more expertise and prowess in storytelling in video games than all of Halo 5, because you have that incredible parallel situation with Master Chief coming back to Earth and getting rewarded in commendations for the events of Halo 1, like cut in between with the Arbiter being stripped of his rank and tortured because he failed at Halo 1. It's like such a fantastic setup to that campaign. So like beautifully done. It's like Halo 5 displays none of that, despite having some very superficial similarities to Halo 2's plotline with the like wet fart of an ending. I mean, okay, Halo 2 did not have a wet fart, but the cliffhanger like non-ending and the dual protagonist setup.
I'll fucking say it. 11 years removed, Halo 2 is a great fucking ending.
It's a very exciting ending. Like, it's a strong cliffhanger.
If you're playing it in context, that ending gets you jazzed.
Yeah.
And I totally get, maybe at the time when you had to wait 3 years, it would piss you off, but now it's like, I don't even remember that. It's just, finish the fight, and then I can go finish the fight, and it just it pushes you into Halo 3 in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Kind of like Empire Strikes Back, pushing you into Return of the Jedi. Where all the chips are on the table, and it's time to see what happens with them. And I don't feel that from Halo 5. Like, I don't feel like they could pick up the pieces in Halo 6, because there's no foundation laid. Halo 6 could be a great, 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 great game, and it's always going to be limited by how they set it up.
I mean, although, like, it's something where I feel like Halo 6 can kind of be whatever it wants to be. Because Halo 5 did nothing in terms of the story.
Yeah.
Like I said, it takes, like, one small step where it sets up Cortana as the villain. And that's the only thing that happens in the course of Halo 5 that, like, contributes to the ongoing narrative. Other than, I guess, like, Spartan Locke is a guy who exists. You also get that information is given to you over the course of this game.
What do you think the chances are of Spartan Locke actually ever factoring into a Halo game again in any...
I think he's going to be in Halo 6. I think, like, I don't get the impression that 343 Industries knows how bad their own story is. Like, I don't know. It's really hard to tell, but they lean so heavily into Spartan Locke with, like, over the course of this game. I mean, you play as him for almost the entire thing. He's in all the marketing all over the place, like, incredibly mismarketed because they market a completely different story.
Okay, let's play speculation then.
Yeah, okay.
Let's play speculation, because clearly what they were marketing was a different game.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind that if the game were good.
Yeah, because that happens all the time, and it's not usually a big deal.
No, and that's fine. But what's fascinating about this situation is that they were marketing such a specific different game.
Yes.
Like a game where the Master Chief did something traitorous.
Yeah, and there was like this extreme confidence in the marketing where they had that, like the two trailers where one was from the Master Chief's point of view talking to Locke, and one was Locke's point of view talking to Master Chief, and it was like they had like hashtag Hunt the Truth. They like released this like weird ARG podcast and all this shit.
Yeah.
Like they leaned super heavily into that marketing.
Like it seemed like a game where you would play as Locke because Locke had a very specific reason to hunt the Chief, like a personal beef or something. And the Chief had a specific reason for doing whatever he was doing, and it would probably be like an Arbiter Chief split from 2, where you went back and forth.
Yeah.
And like maybe it's the same kind of thing where the Chief's actions impacted the Spartan Locke, so now they have to kind of orbit each other in this dynamic way. And I really do wonder if they were building that story at some point.
It feels like
it fell apart, and then maybe why Locke is as big in this one as he is because it was easier to just develop generic levels for him. And again, as we say, all of his stuff, no Spartan Locke level has any significance on the major story.
Yeah.
The 3 Chief ones are the big ones with actual narrative significance, and maybe the very last Locke level. But really, it's more the cutscenes around it. So really, it's just maybe those Chief levels are remnants of a different game, and the Locke stuff is just, okay, we have 6 fucking months, let's do this, and we won't do the Chief, because if we had to do the Chief, we'd have to write story.
I think they did the different... I think it was the different way around. I think that originally you were probably intended to play as Locke almost even more than Chief, and that like they had this whole storyline set out that was a lot more ambitious of Master Chief, because there's all these pieces in place to create a convincing narrative for Master Chief being hunted by the UNSC. Specifically, if you're turning Cortana into a villain, and there are multiple lines of dialogue early on from Dr. Halsey to the effect of, don't let John meet Cortana. He's not emotionally prepared for it. And they are clearly setting up at the very beginning of the game that the Master Chief is going to meet Cortana, and he is going to follow Cortana and do what Cortana wants, and like not realize the full scope of her plan, which is like all the plots of Halo is eventually just like all the life of the galaxy is going to be destroyed, and he doesn't fully understand that. It's like because there's so many little lines of dialogue that like build up that plot that then at the halfway point of the game, basically by the time you play the second Master Chief mission, that's no longer become a factor because the Master Chief is just like, well, no, she's clearly evil. I want to go talk to her, but like, no, I'm not going to like just join her. Like, that's not going to happen. And so it felt like the original plot design would have been, no, Chief does, and like the beginning of the game would probably be very similar. The Chief ends up kind of working for Cortana to go find those Guardian things and bring them back, and that the structure of the game would be you as Agent Locke, or Spartan Locke, hunting down Master Chief as he's getting the Guardians and trying to stop him and figure out what's going on. And that they they didn't have enough time to do that story as it needed to be done. So instead, they they strip all the actual story out of the Spartan Locke levels that they had finished, and then made Master Chief levels that created a small pocket plot that encapsulated this game. And
you're probably right, and the thing is, the game you're describing sounds really good.
Yeah, it sounds a lot more interesting, because the thing that very specifically makes me feel this, that even if I'm sure it's not exactly what I was trying to lay out there, but it felt like there was a time when this campaign was going to be very different, at the very least, because you have these vestigial elements where there are 3 levels, 1 on Meridian Prime and 2 on Sanghelios, where you're playing as Spartan Locke, and they're non-combat levels where you have this small area where you walk around and you talk to some NPCs. And they are like these weird, flaccid little levels that like have kind of nothing going on. Like you literally, the first time you talk to 3 people that have really nothing interesting to say, and it could have just been a cutscene that gave you the like gist of the information. And the second time you talk to 2 people, and the third time you talk to 1 person. Like those are the entire missions, and there's really nothing else going on in those areas. And it feels like there was a version of the game where there were going to be a lot more of those, and there were going to be like a hub area or something where you're on Meridian Prime, and that's where you're getting missions, and you're going out and doing the missions, and like loading into different missions, and almost having like an ODST thing or something going on, which is the only kind of game I can imagine those areas being designed for, because they're so pointless here. They just feel like they are this like weird bandage that's left there to tie the plot together, because they didn't have the time to convey that story information in a more economic fashion with how they rewrote the story.
Yeah, I mean, this is no Metal Gear Solid 5 level of duct tape.
No.
But it's getting into that discussion, which is weird. I mean, it's a weird thing, though, because the game does look so polished. Like, on the surface, those cutscenes are beautiful. They are so well directed, and you know, the various like mission-to-mission stuff, it doesn't feel like there's a ton of stuff missing. It doesn't feel like, it feels like the version of the game it is, so you have to piece all this together outside of it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a weird form of lack of polish where you kind of have to deduce it from what isn't and is there. It's
something that, like, to take that step, I think you have to be convinced that there was no way that they thought that this story was good when they were making it. Like, they have to be conscious on some level that, like, they fucked it up this time around. Like, whether or not that was because they made, like, hard cuts at some point in the story, which, like, I understand, like, making games is hard. I'm not blaming them that's the creative situation they found themselves in. But it is, like, I mean, you know, Halo 2 is another, like, game that, like, very famously was kind of unfinished and had to be pushed out the door. They had to patch things together, and that's why you have things like the Gravemind cutscene that feels like it's 30 minutes long, because there was going to be levels, like, in there that they, like, cut out because they didn't have time to make them, so they just made a longer cutscene to, like, make a more convincing plot and cover it up. And I think they hide it better here than they did in Halo 2, but you do, like, combining all those weird elements together, I, at the very least, feel, like, convinced that there was some sort of major cut that happened at some point along the way.
Obviously, I think, and yeah,
because also the short length of the campaign,
right,
is like also like sort of indicates that to me.
And just the truncated nature of it, where the levels are so short, and they feel like they're just as they're getting some steam, they're done.
Yeah,
like none of the final encounters feel like final encounters. They feel like this is when the level's about to get started. No, it's time for a cutscene in the next level.
Or here's the. And I can't believe we have not fucking brought this up yet.
Save the best for last, Sean.
Yeah, like, here's actually the biggest area where you're like, they had another idea for what's going to happen, and they just did not have the time to do it, because, like I said before, this game took me about 6.5 hours to beat, and guess what you basically then have to do, almost, like, a little more than every hour in the game, is you have to fight one motherfucker. There's this one motherfucker, this one boss, that you have to fight not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times. You have to fight the exact same fucking boss in 5 different encounters in this game. 5 fucking times, and the last 2 is you have to fight 2 of them at the same time, and the last one you have to fight 3 of them at the same time, and that's the only variation. They don't have different moves. They're not even like in particularly different areas. No, you have to fight this Warden Eternal motherfucker 5 times in a 6-hour campaign. That is fucking brutal. Like, that is pathetic. And it's something where the first time you fight him, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Because he's kind of like a Destiny boss, only even more just sort of like bullet spongy and annoying. Because he has so many moves that are just one-hit kills. And the first time you fight him, like, this is interesting because Halo doesn't do bosses that much. It's like happened here and there, but not like this. It's like, oh, like maybe this is going to be one of the things that's different about this. Is they're going to have these more like fully designed boss encounters. And it's like, I mean, they do. They have 5 of them. Well, no, they have 1 of them. It just happens 5 times. It's like, I have never seen something that egregious. Like, I'm trying hard to pull up something that is that bad, where you have to fight the same boss 5 fucking times in this short game. Like, it gets completely ridiculous at some point, where you fight him basically 2 levels in a row.
No, you're right, and the closest I can think is Troy Baker Dude in Mass Effect 3. And even then, he does change up his moveset every time.
Yeah, and that's only like 2 times, right? I
think you fight him 3 times.
You might fight him 3 times, but even then, that's like a 30-hour game if you're doing the side stuff. It's like, and he changes up his moves, and there are story reasons for why he is there. Yeah. Where it's like, there's like, the Warden Eternal feels like a character that they wrote in at the last minute to me. Like, he has some of the most just insane pieces of dialogue where he literally, like, when he first encounters the Master Chief, he just straight up says, you are not going to be convinced by Cortana's plan. You're just going to get in the way, so I'm just going to kill you. Which just feels like, again, in like that other version of the plot, since they didn't go with that, they were like, well, how do we just smooth that over? And it's like, you just have this character completely undercut what they had set up by like having like, oh, maybe Master Chief's going to like kind of go evil and join Cortana. And then he's just like, no, that's not going to happen. That's not, it's like, and it's just a line of dialogue in a mission. He's just like, nope. So I'm just going to fight you because you're obviously just going to portray Cortana like I read ahead in the script. That's what happens.
He did the space.
So I'm just going back in the past and like just moving things along. He's just like fucking greasing up the wheels. He just wants the story to be over as quickly as possible. It's the most shameless fucking thing I have ever seen. It's like everything wrong with the Halo 5 campaign, I feel like, is just embodied in the Warden Turtle. Just like, he's so bad. It's so bad. 5 times. It's crazy.
Crazy. It's sad. So, final thoughts on Halo 5 Guardians. I mean, there's the other thing. Like, the fact that it's got that subtitle Guardians, that could just be a marketing thing, but the way you described your theory of the story also makes me think that just was a more substantive thing at some point. Like, the idea of Guardians and guardianship might have been an actual motif in the game.
Because it is something that, like, they say all the time, because you do have these big anime, like, Neon Genesis Evangelion-looking Guardian things that, like, are really cool visual design, and it feels like they're supposed to be really important, but, like, I don't really know what they are. Like, I have no idea what the fuck any of that had to do with anything. Because,
you know how I bet you could learn? Read one of the books.
Yeah, like, I'm just going to go dig into that Forerunner trilogy, because apparently everything in the plot of these Halo games, if, like, reading online forums is telling the truth, is, like, just told in those Forerunner books, and, like, sets up all this mantle of responsibility and the created and all this AI nonsense that's going on.
Which begs the question, what's the point of either of them if they're just telling each other?
I don't know.
Because actually, those Forerunner books would sound really cool to me if they weren't being mined for the games.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to, like, okay, that sounds like, maybe I'd like to go learn some of the backstory, and I'd read, that's what extended universe stuff is for.
Yeah.
But no. It's not even really extended universe at that point.
No, it's
just
not. It's
the universe.
They've shoved it into the mainline continuity in a way that, like, it hurts. It's like, it feels so misguided in such a move that is going to only make it harder for people to get into Halo in the future. Like, it's very excluding, and it's something that I hate because it's so excluding that I feel excluded because I haven't read the specific books that they're drawing on. Like, I only read the first few, and then I stopped after that because I don't have enough time in my life to read every single fucking Halo novel. I just can't do it, because not all of them are going to be good. It's so, like, it's just insane that I can read some Halo books, but I haven't read enough to understand what's going on in the games. It's just depressing. It's so depressing.
Yeah. All right, final thoughts on Halo 5 Guardians. I think we've said most of it.
Yeah.
Again, as down as we've been, it's not a bad game. That I really do hope, for instance, that the 60 frames per second stuff they've done here becomes a paradigm. Because that is so cool that they were able to... Because it's a really good-looking game.
Yeah. It's
got some great art direction, and it is rock solid. There isn't a frame rate dip in sight, whether you're online or you are playing on your own on the campaign.
Yeah.
It looks great, and I love that they found a good way with the relatively limited Xbox One technology, like in comparison to the PS4, to be able to make things scalable so that that frame rate is just buttery smooth the whole time. Because that makes the game play so well, and I think that's an exciting direction for next-gen gaming.
Yeah.
But it almost feels like they spent all their time in service of that, in terms of like just basic balance tweaks and stuff and how the Spartans move, and not in service of the things that, at the end of the day, matter the most, which is the actual gameplay.
Yeah, which is the content. Again, this is something that I wrote in my review. It's actually kind of the thesis, is that, like, you need to have really solid gameplay. Like, that's very important. But the most important thing in a game is what that game asks you to do with the gameplay.
Right.
It's like, it's that, and like, you can do that in so many different ways. You can do that in having varied multiplayer objectives and like very interesting multiplayer objectives, or you can cover like up the repetition that you're doing with a compelling narrative, which is like what most games try to do.
And
but you need to have that element.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if I were to, make a list of my top 10 favorite games ever, I could go down and probably pick a few that don't play as well as Halo 5 does.
Yeah, no, I could pick plenty.
But they're way better games because, again, that's really not... A game is about something different than that.
Yeah, it's if you can't have fun with a game, like, making those really strong mechanics and then just dropping everyone into like a gray box and having them just do whatever they want to do. Like there's an artistry and a design to how you compel people to play your game and give people the illusion of like that they are making a difference and that they are doing different things, even if they are doing the exact same thing over and over again.
This really does,
and
sound
it's lost in Halo 5.
This really does sound like our Metal Gear Solid 5 review at a certain point.
It does. Like it's like they have similar problems, but on like different scales.
Yes. All right. Well, that's Halo 5. If you're a big Halo fan, play it. Obviously, you have to. But
like I said earlier, like I would encourage people to stay away until some of that like Big Team Battle and Forge stuff gets dropped in there and see how that works, because or until the price drops, because honestly, like I don't feel like there is a lot here to justify getting a $60 game.
And there are lots of other $60 games right now that are easier purchases, like The Witcher 3, like Batman Arkham Knight, like Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Like the upcoming, Fallout 4, obviously.
4, Rise of Tomb Raider.
You don't have a dearth of things to buy at the moment.
Or like even probably like even I'm not the biggest Call of Duty guy, but the new Call of Duty Black Ops 3 is coming out. I think it might be out tomorrow.
It looks like it's going to be pretty good. So.
It's like I would probably encourage people to maybe get that instead of Halo 5 and wait for Halo 5 to price drop and have more content later on, because I'm sure at the very least those Call of Duty games are like really richly featured. Like they have like full campaigns, they have multiplayer, and they have zombies and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of different variety of things to do in those games,
and
Halo 5 does not have.
And it's going to play well and run well and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's God damn it, we just recommended a Call of Duty game over Halo.
Yeah, and it's like, it's sad that it's that state, but like I feel pretty confident in making that recommendation.
I agree.
Yeah.
So, all right. You can go read Sean's review on the site. We're going to try to get that up before this, and so read that, and visit us on Tumblr and all that. You know it. I'm too sad to go through the whole spiel.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like I actually wanted to like bring it back a sec, because it's something that I had to remind myself to do while I was writing the review, is that it is important to point out that like it's not as if what Halo 5 does well doesn't matter, because it is still really fun to play, and I don't regret having played it.
No, not at all.
I do regret that it's like paying money for it, but like the 60 frames per second thing, the tightness of the gameplay, all of that should be heavily commended. What it does well, it does extraordinarily well. It's just extremely unfortunate that where it falls flat is where I personally, and you personally, seem to think is like a far more important area, and that hopefully they will be able to sort of like bring this game up to full speed and with future content drops, and and there is a chance that within a year the conversation around Halo 3 can be completely different, and I'm hopeful that it will be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to stop playing Halo 5 when I'm enjoying it. I really am enjoying it, but as you say, it's kind of the feeling. It's more than anything else. It's kind of the atmosphere around it of the crappiness of the campaign, and then kind of the sparseness of what there is so far. That even if they start to fix it and make it better, there's just something kind of tainted about it.
Yeah,
like we were talking before. Like, how would you grade this on a scale? Because you were asking me, do you use grades on your site? And I'm like, hell no. But if I were to, like, Halo 5 was like a solid C plus B minus to me.
Yeah.
So again, not bad. But in some ways, for a series I love, that is way more damning than if I were to give an F or a D.
Yeah. Because even if, we have obviously gone on record extensively with how much we do not like Metal Gear Solid 5, but I will at least give Metal Gear Solid 5 a whole hell of a lot of credit for being extremely experimental and for it being completely unlike any other game out there. I think it fails comprehensively, but it does go for something very different and extremely unique. And I can respect Metal Gear Solid 5, I think, on a level that Halo 5 just is disappointing and feels like it's aiming for a very low bar. That Metal Gear Solid 5 was aiming for something crazy, and it fucking missed it by a country mile. But you have to respect something that has that kind of ambition, because at the very least, I think Metal Gear Solid 5 is a more interesting game, even if it's not, I think, a better game.
No. All right, well, that's it for this week. We'll be back next week to talk about Doctor Who, which is this great ray of light in our lives right now.
Excited about that.
And some other stuff. And then video game apocalypse in November with so much shit. And I still want to play Assassin's Creed. And
I want to play Assassin's Creed as well, yeah. But I've already pre-ordered Fallout 4 on digital services, so.
I think I'm just going to get both that and Tomb Raider on the same day, and we'll just see how it goes. Here's the thing.
I like that, because there's such different games, you just, put them both down, it's like, I'm just going to, blindfold, I'm just going to go with, what, the Force will just guide me.
Maybe I should do that, but, it's great because, so those come out November 10th,
yes,
which means with preloading you can play them November 9th.
Yes.
I turn in my master's thesis on November 9th.
Congratulations.
That's going to be my reward to myself, though, is I'm going to come home and be like, that responsibility is out of my life, and I can replace it with games.
Yes, I can just destroy myself now with, this billion-hour-long video game.
Yes. And I actually think they'll be okay, because I could probably finish Tomb Raider in, a night or two.
Yeah.
And then play Halo or Fallout 4, which will take significantly more than a night or two.
Yeah, so there's stuff coming down the pipeline in the future.
And we will talk about all of it here on the Weekly Stuff Podcast, where we're a little bit sad right now.
Yeah.